Chapter 36. The main person in charge of cultivating the disciples of the Misty School was Shangguan Laosi, so he naturally nodded in agreement. Oyu Peng continued, although there are a lot of herbs in this secret plane, they are still limited. Last time I brought back some herbs, I asked Yang to take one of them and cultivate them in her Huanxi mountain villa, but I don't know if it will be effective. Sixth junior brother, you have to pay attention to this. If Yang has any requests, you have to do your best to coordinate. Shu Laosi smiled and said, no problem, third senior brother. Yang this girl likes to fiddle with strange things the most. Maybe we can really cultivate good herbs for her. At the mention of Oyu Peng, this sister, everyone's face was full of smiles. Boss who also said, time really flies. In the blink of an eye, Yang this little girl is also an adult. How can we not be old? Liu Laosi, who was drinking silently and didn't participate in the discussion, also said, that's right. The little girl who peed on my head back then has now become a heroine. Oyu Peng glared and said, these words can only be said in front of the brothers. If there's an outsider or Yang present, you absolutely can't say it. Then he added, unless you don't want your big axe anymore. Liu Laosi shrank his head and said, I know, I don't want this great aunt to sink my axe into the Luo River again. Everyone burst into laughter, and the tense atmosphere was swept away. Everyone tasted the tea for a while, then Boss who said, Laosi, it's not far from the 2nd of February. You also have to prepare. Ask Laosi, and Laosi to go with you. Also pick a group of capable disciples from the second generation so that they can take care of each other. Oyu Peng shook his head and said, I think this year's 2nd of February will be the same as last year. I will only bring Madame Oyu and a few serving maids. It will look like we are going to the Dragon God Temple to burn incense. We can't let others know. Shangguan Laosi shook his head and said, third senior brother, our Misty School has made such a big move, there's no way they wouldn't notice it. Maybe they don't know our real trump card, but we can't let our guard down. It's better to bring more people, just in case. Oyu Peng pondered for a moment and said, fourth martial brother, you're still looking at the situation with the same eyes as before. Right now, our martial arts are well known in Jianghu and can be ranked at the top. I believe that if I insist on escaping, there aren't many people in Jianghu who can stop me. And those few people can be counted with one's fingers. How could they lower themselves to ambush me? Shangguan Laosi gave Boss Hu a look. Boss Hu thought for a moment and said, Laosan, what Laosi said makes sense. It's better to be safe than sorry. Jianghu is full of conspiracies and intrigues. Protecting yourself is the way to go. You're the face of our Misty School, so you can't afford to have any mishaps. How about this, since you don't want to attract attention, then you don't need to bring too many people. Why don't you bring Laosi and the girls with you? Before he finished, Oyu Peng didn't say anything. Instead, Liu Laowu applauded and said, big brother, that's a good idea. That Laosi used to be a cart driver. After not driving for a few years, he's probably itching for a fight. Moreover, his body is now like an iron shield. He can block the hidden weapons for sister-in-law. Oyu Peng had no choice but to agree and said, all right, then it's settled. I won't bring the second-generation disciples. They still need to improve their skills. Don't delay their development. As for those who don't improve their skills this time, it's useless for me to bring them along. Everyone saw that Oyu Peng had given in and didn't insist on it anymore. After arranging the sex affairs, everyone dispersed. The candles in the meeting hall were extinguished. The dark hall was like an old man in his twilight years. He closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Yu City was the main city of Yu Country. It was a few days' journey from Pingyang City. Oyu Peng set off early the next day. Since he was going to the Longshan Temple to offer incense, he had to be dressed to do so. He couldn't use his light body technique to travel alone. Just as Liu Laowu said, that Laosi was an experienced cart driver. When he heard that he was going to drive the sect master's cart to Yu City, he got on the horse early and checked the condition of the cart carefully. Now, he was driving the cart smoothly and proudly on the road. He was enjoying it very much. Oyu Peng and Madame Oyu sat in the cart. Although this cart was specially made by the sect, it was rare to see it so stable. Oyu Peng looked at the cup full of wine on the small table in the room. He couldn't help but smile and say to Madame Oyu, "This Larosai's skills in driving the cart are not to be trifled with. We can't go without him when we go out in the future." Madame Oyu also smiled sweetly and said, "That's a waste of his talent." Oyu Peng said, "What is lacking the most in the martial arts world today? Talent. This is talent. He has the ability to fight against 10,000 people and can drive so steadily. He's a compound talent. My Misty School has hidden dragons and crouching tigers." Madame Oyu rebuked, "You, the sect master, are serious in the sect. Why do you have a bad smile on your face now? Speaking of compound talents, you're the best in the sect. Not only are you the best in the world at ethereal steps, but you're also the best in making your wife happy." Oyu Peng laughed and said to the outside, "Larosai, good job. You're the best at driving a cart in the sect. I can't compare to you. You're not good at making your wife happy. I'm the best in the sect." When the stone cow heard this, he laughed out loud and drove the cart even harder. Madame Oyu blushed in the cart and hit Oyu Peng, causing the maids in the cart to laugh softly. At this time, the Larosai's wild singing came from outside the cart. It must be because the Larosai had traveled to a remote place and the Larosai sang. Everyone listened carefully. The Larosai sang, "Sister, you sit at the bow of the boat. I walk on the shore. Love and love, the rope swings." It was a song that the Larosai had learned from somewhere. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. After traveling for a few days, they were about to reach U City. The journey was peaceful and they didn't encounter any trouble. The road outside U City was very wide and there were many trees planted along the road. The weather was warm now and there was some greenery on the treetops. There were also many passers-by and the cart could no longer gallop as freely as before. However, under the Larosai's skillful driving, the speed didn't slow down. Madame Oyu looked at the scenery outside the window and praised, "This U City is indeed the main city of our U nation. It's much more prosperous than Pingyang City. Even the outskirts are so lively. I wonder if the Dragon God Temple is full of people now." When the cart arrived at the Dragon God Temple, they realized that the inside and outside of the temple were full of people. There was no place for the cart to stop. Fortunately, Oyu Peng and the rest had martial arts and weren't afraid of the crowd. They moved slowly with the crowd and soon arrived in front of the temple. Everything was the same as in the past. Oyu Peng and his wife offered incense to the dragon god, made a wish, kowtowed and gave alms. Then, they followed the crowd out of the dragon god temple. The Larosai stood on the cart and looked around. When he saw Oyu Peng and the rest coming over, he immediately jumped down from the cart and said, "Sect Master, why are you out so soon?" Oyu Peng said, "There are so many people coming here every year. The incense is very prosperous. The monks in the temple are all busy and can't talk to their abbot. We'll talk about it when we have time." The Larosai gestured for everyone to get on the cart and then asked Oyu Peng, "Sect Master, are we going to the U City branch now?" Oyu Peng waved his hand and said, "There's no hurry to go to the branch. Go to the restaurant next door to buy some wine and food. We'll go to Wutong Mountain now." The Larosai agreed and went to buy wine and food. Madame Oyu asked curiously, "Why are we going to Wutong Mountain again? Last time, you, Yangming Jusha, Wn Chungjiu and Tan Yefeng were drinking wine and discussing heroes at Wutong Mountain. Could it be again this time?" Oyu Peng smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't have enough fun last year. Of course, I have to continue this year." Not long after, the Larosai bought the wine and food and then drove to Wutong Mountain. The Dragon God Temple was at the foot of Wutong Mountain. Not long after, the carriage arrived at a place where they could climb the mountain. There were also some wine shops and inns in this place. Oyu Peng and the others booked a few rooms and arranged for Madame Oyu and a few maids to rest. Oyu Peng took the Larosai and walked up the mountain path. Wutong Mountain was not too high and it was not the season to climb the mountain. There were not many tourists. Oyu Peng used his qinggong to walk in front. Although the Larosai practiced external martial arts and also carried wine and food, he was not much slower than Oyu Peng on the mountain path. Not long after, Oyu Peng reached the top of the mountain. Then, the Larosai also came up. Looking at the Larosai's calm and steady breathing, Oyu Peng could not help but mutter in his heart. Although he had only used 30% of his Qinggong, he was good at Qinggong. This 30% of his Qinggong was already very impressive in the martial arts world, but the Larosai was not much slower than him. It could be seen that the effect of this bone-strengthening pill was extraordinary. At this time, it was almost noon. The top of Wutong Mountain was bathed in sunlight and was very warm. Oyu Peng looked under the tree at the top of the mountain. No one had come yet. Oyu Peng called the Larosai to walk under the tree. He sat on the stone and let the Larosai place the wine and food he bought one by one in the open space under the tree. Before the Larosai finished placing the wine and food, Oyu Peng heard footsteps coming from the mountain path. He stood up and saw a short and strong man coming up from the bottom of the mountain. It was the Wan Jian Peak's sword master, Wan Chengjiu. Oyu Peng stepped forward and bowed. "Brother Wan, how have you been?" Wan Chengjiu leaped to the top of the mountain and returned the greeting. "Sect leader Oyu came really early. We agreed to meet at noon. I thought I was early, but I didn't expect someone to come even earlier." Oyu Peng said, "I came a little earlier to arrange the wine and get drunk." Wan Chengjiu said, "Sect leader Oyu is meticulous. I admire you." So the two walked under the tree and chatted. After a while, the sun in the sky was about to hang above their heads. It was almost noon, but the other two still hadn't appeared. Oyu Peng and Wan Chengjiu couldn't help but think, could it be that something happened? Just as they were thinking, they heard a voice from the bottom of the mountain. Brother Tan was half a step late. "This little brother has won this round." It was Yangming Jusha's hearty laughter. Oyu Peng and Wan Chengjiu smiled at each other and turned to look at the intersection. They saw Yangming Jusha's thin figure appear on the path to the top of the mountain. A middle-aged man with a medium build and dressed like a rich man also climbed up the mountain. It was the Tan family's patriarch, Tan Yefeng. Chapter 37. When the four met, they greeted each other. Wan Chengjiu asked, "Why do you say that, Brother Yangming?" Yangming Jusha smiled and said, "Brother Tan and I met at the bottom of the mountain. When we saw that it was almost time, we made a bet to see who would reach the top first. It seems that I'm the early bird that reached first." Oyu Peng smiled and said, "Brother Tan's strength isn't in light body technique. You can compete with him in martial arts later." Yangming Jusha waved his hand and said, "I know that. I can't beat him, but today we're only talking about wine and not swords." "Chief Oyu, you're disappointed." Tan Yefeng also spoke, "Brother Yangming has the upper hand in this bet. I'll drink 3 big bowls in a while." Oyu Peng and Wan Chengjiu laughed and said, "Brother Tan is a straightforward person. Come, Brother Yangming, Brother Tan, this way please." Everyone came to the bottom of the tree and saw the stone ox standing there like an iron tower. They asked curiously, "Who is this brother?" Oyu Peng introduced, "This is the stone ox, a disciple of the Misty School. Stone ox, come and greet Yangming Jusha and the Tan family's patriarch." The stone ox came over and greeted them. Everyone praised and said that the Misty School was really full of hidden talents. Oyu Peng also humbly denied it. Then, Oyu Peng let the stone ox guard the entrance to the mountain to prevent people from going up the mountain. Everyone sat down. Tan Yefeng first picked up a jar of wine from the ground and poured it into a porcelain bowl. He said to Yangming Jusha, "Watch carefully, I'll drink first." Then, he put the bowl to his mouth and drank it all in one gulp. Then, he drank another bowl. When he drank the third bowl, Oyu Peng said, "Brother Tan, we'll drink with you too." After saying that, he also poured a bowl. Yangming Jusha and Wan Chengjiu also agreed and poured a bowl each. Everyone clinked their bowls and drank it all in one gulp. Then, they put the porcelain bowls on the ground. Tan Yefeng was the first to speak. "Brother Oyu, you're really thoughtful. I came in a hurry, and seeing that it's getting late, I've already forgotten about the food and wine. I'm sure Brother Yangming has the same thoughts as me, right?" Yangming Jusha said awkwardly, "That's right. I didn't expect there to be so many people in Dragon God Temple. It took me a bit of time to arrange for my family members, and in the end, I ended up delaying my own matters. WN Joching laughed heartily and said, I didn't waste any time, but I also forgot about these minor details. But Chief OU is here to help us. It's fine as long as we have wine to drink. There's no need to say so much. OU Peng also said, Brother WAN is right. It's fine as long as someone is prepared. Why should we care about who it is? Come, let's drink again. Everyone laughed heartily and drank another bowl. Tan Yefeng was the first to speak. Everyone, although there aren't many tourists on Wutong Mountain right now, it's not like there aren't any. Letting the stone cows guard this intersection is only a temporary solution. I think we should return to the main topic and discuss things earlier. Once we've settled the important matters, how about we drink and chat merrily? Yang Ming Jusha also said, I have the same intention. OU Peng said, then how about we first confirm the next time we enter the secret area? WAN Chungjiu also nodded in agreement. Tan Yefeng said, but according to the booklet, we can only enter on the 15th of the first lunar month every year. Yang Ming Jusha said, Brother Tan, don't worry. According to my speculation, the booklet said that we can only enter on the 15th of the first lunar month for 2 reasons. First, it's because of the formation formed by the jujube trees outside this secret area. A passage will only appear on the 15th of the first lunar month every year, allowing people to enter. Second, only the sunlight on the 15th of the first lunar month can accurately indicate the location of the entrance. Before I entered last time, I've already made marks on the 2 jujube trees near the entrance, so it shouldn't be difficult to find the location of this entrance. I've never heard of a formation in the martial arts world that can change with time. Moreover, there are so many days in a year, so the formation can only pass through on a specific day. This is too unbelievable. Brother WN, Brother OU, your faction has been passed down for a long time, and you've encountered many things in the martial arts world. Have you encountered such a thing? WN Chungjiu and OU Peng looked at each other and shook their heads, but OU Peng said, although we haven't encountered it, and the ancient books in the faction haven't recorded it, the formation is indeed lost in the martial arts world. We can't be sure that this formation doesn't have the function of a time limit. The 4 of them did not speak. After all, none of them had any attainments in formations. There was no such talent in the faction, and there might not even be such a person in the entire martial arts world. How could they make a decision? Tan Yefeng said, then there are only 2 ways now. One is to wait patiently until the 15th of the first lunar month next year, then organize people to enter. The other is to find time recently to send a few people to explore the path and see if we can enter. What do you think? WN Chungjiu said, the matter of obtaining the treasure in the secret land is of great importance. There can't be the slightest mistake. Last time, we secretly sent the 2nd generation disciples there. Although we kept it a secret in advance and didn't leak the news, we can't guarantee that the other factions haven't heard of it. In order to keep it a secret, I suggest that we don't try it rashly without being absolutely sure. Otherwise, if the news is leaked, this secret land won't be the secret land of our 4 factions, but the secret land of the entire martial arts world. OU Peng also agreed and said, there are no secrets in the martial arts world. Maybe our meeting at Wutong Mountain this time has already fallen into the eyes of someone with ulterior motives. Presumably, there are already people secretly watching us on this mountain. Yang Ming Jusha said, are we just going to wait for a year in vain? OU Peng said with a smile, Brother Yang Ming, you don't know the value of salt and rice until you're in charge. Our faction's actions in the martial arts world can't be compared to your family's power. The composition of our faction is complicated, and it's inevitable that the good and the bad are mixed together. It's very difficult to really do anything in secret. We have to be very careful. WN Chungjiu also nodded in agreement. Yang Ming Jusha still didn't give up and said, since you all have such intentions, then I'm going to find a time to explore the secret land again. What do you think? WN Chungjiu and OU Peng frowned at the same time. Only Tan Yefeng was expressionless, as if he had already known that Yang Ming Jusha would have such an idea. OU Peng saw Tan Yefeng's expression and asked, what does Brother Tan mean? Tan Yefeng coughed and said, "In fact, I also have this intention for a long time. I want to explore the secret land before the 15th of the first month of next year. If Brother Yangming didn't mention it, I would have suggested it to you." Wn Chengjiu lowered his head and didn't speak, as if he was thinking. Oyu Peng said, "Before deciding whether to go to the jungle or not, I have a proposal to discuss with you and see if it's feasible." Everyone looked at Oyu Peng strangely, waiting for him to speak. Oyu Peng said, "I suggest that we form an alliance and advance and retreat together in the treasure hunting of the secret land." Yangming Jusha shook his head and said, "Our villa can't form an alliance with your Misty School and Wn Jianfeng. The Jianghu affairs you participate in are too complicated. There are often gang bloody battles. After forming an alliance, it's not good for the development of our villa." Tan Yefeng also repeatedly agreed. Oyu Peng said with confidence, "You too have misunderstood. The alliance I'm talking about is a little different from the alliance I usually talk about. First, it's not an alliance between gangs. There's no need to participate in the Jianghu affairs between each other. Second, this alliance is purely an alliance between the four of us. Although the four of us can't share weal and woe with each other, we can form an alliance to advance and retreat together in the secret land and enjoy blessings together. Third, this alliance is limited to the secret land and doesn't involve other aspects. What do you think?" Wn Chengjiu said with joy, "Leader Oyu really has a bright mind. This idea is good. Let's do it." Yangming Jusha and Tan Yefeng also smiled and agreed. So, Oyu Peng poured a porcelain bowl of wine, cut his finger with a sword, and dripped blood into the wine. The other three did the same. Oyu Peng took the porcelain bowl, shook it slightly, and drank a few mouthfuls. Then he handed it to Wn Chengjiu. Wn Chengjiu still drank it. Then Tan Yefeng and Yangming Jusha all drank the blood wine. Yangming Jusha smashed the porcelain bowl. Everyone laughed and said, "The alliance is a success." Everyone drank another bowl of wine together. Oyu Peng then said, "Since Brother Yangming and Brother Tan insist on going, Brother Wn and I will naturally advance and retreat together with you. How about this, at the end of this month, we'll still send disciples to the same place as last time. Brother Yangming will still lead the way. How about it?" Yangming Jusha said, "No problem. This is my duty. However, this time, do we still send each other's family members to each other's place?" Oyu Peng, Wn Chengjiu, and Tan Yefeng looked at each other. Oyu Peng said, "Last time was the first time we cooperated, so we didn't feel at ease. Now that we've formed an alliance, we naturally feel at ease. I don't think there's any need." Wn Chengjiu and Tan Yefeng also agreed. At this time, the stone cow walked over quickly and said, "Gang leader, there are a few tourists coming up the mountain path from the foot of the mountain. Should we stop them?" Oyu Peng waved his hand and said, "This Wutong mountain isn't our home. Of course, we can't stop others from coming. You don't have to guard it. Just wait here." After saying this, the four poured wine and talked about the strange happenings of the Jianghu with the food and wine. They seemed to be in a leisurely mood. Not long after, a few people came to the top of the mountain. It looked like they were really tourists. After touring the mountain for a while, they saw people drinking and chatting in this picturesque place. They felt disdain and didn't stay long before going down the mountain. Wn Chengjiu asked Oyu Peng, "Could it be that we're being paranoid?" Oyu Peng smiled and said, "These people aren't, but we can't say that there aren't any at the foot of the mountain. These people know that we're all from the Jianghu and have sharp eyes. How could they come up so easily?" Oyu Peng suddenly thought of something and asked Wn Chengjiu, "The news of the secret plane must be kept secret. We can't relax in the slightest. Where is Situ Ping of the evil tiger gang now?" Wn Chengjiu smiled and drank a mouthful of wine. "Brother Oyu, don't worry. Although I'm not as meticulous as you, I still know this. Leader Situ hasn't left Wanjian Peak since she returned with my disciple last time. I've already ordered an elder to accept her as a disciple. Moreover, I've also sent a few capable men to Lu Town. Leader Situ won't be Leader Situ anymore, but Wanjian Peak's Situ Ping." Chapter 38. Oyu Peng asked curiously, "What do you mean?" Wn Chungjio smiled and said, "If Sichu Ping wants to cultivate my 10,000 Swords Peak's martial arts, she naturally has to stay in the 10,000 Swords Peak for a long time. This 10,000 Swords Peak is quite far from Lu Town, so it's naturally inconvenient for her to deal with the matters of the gang. As her martial uncle, I naturally have to do it for her. I have already sent the elite disciples of the gang to Lu Town to take over her evil tiger gang. This kind of small gang, I am only taking care of it for Sichu Ping's sake." Oyu Peng heard this and only smiled. Brother Wn really is working hard for your disciple. However, in his heart, he said, "This old fox, he's still trying to act innocent after taking advantage." Wn Chungjio also said, "Isn't it to protect our secret? Otherwise, why would I be willing to take over this kind of shit?" Everyone said, "Then it's really been hard on Brother Wn, let's drink a bowl." After that, everyone no longer talked about the secret plane, but talked about the blood of the pugilistic world, romance, and everything else. Only when the food and wine were finished did they split up and go their separate ways. However, they all tacitly agreed not to talk about the treasures they obtained in the secret plane and the improvement of their martial arts. Far away, in a secluded mountain village between Lu Town and Pingyang City, in the same manner that took up a lot of space, there were two people sitting in a large hall in the north. One was a skinny young man, and the other was a middle-aged man whose hair was a little white. They were the evil tiger gang's Sichu Liang, hall leader Sichu Liang, and Zhao third brother, hall leader Zhao. The two of them were currently drinking tea with their brows furrowed. Hall master Zhao drank a mouthful of tea, but did not seem to be able to taste the tea's fragrance. He heavily placed the teacup on the table and asked Sichu Liang, "Hall master Sichu, it's been almost a month since there's been any news of the gang leader. We don't even know if he's dead or alive. What should we do?" Sichu Liang said unhappily, "Hall master Zhao, what are you saying? How can you say such inauspicious things during the new year?" Hall master Zhao immediately said embarrassedly, "I'm not in a rush. I take back what I just said." As he said that, he spat on the ground to show that he was taking back what he just said. Then he said, "Without seeing the gang leader, no one had a good year. Who knows what our future will be like?" Sichu Liang comforted him, "Although the gang master isn't in the gang, aren't our evil tiger gang's members still here? Everything should be the same as before. It's not like we've wiped out the gang." Hall master Zhao chuckled and said, "Hall master Sichu, you're also saying inauspicious words." Sichu Liang was stunned for a moment, then he also spat on the ground and said, take it back. This is truly annoying, making me speak without thinking." Hall master Zhao said, it's fine. Isn't everyone worried about gang leaders' safety?" Sichu Liang continued, "In the past, there have been situations where gang master went out and didn't return, but there would still be news coming back. Furthermore, the time he went out was only a few days at most. Now, it's been so long. Could it be, he really?" Sichu Liang didn't dare to say any more. Hall master Zhao continued, "Hall master Sichu, when gang leader isn't here, it's the new year. Most of the gang's members are at home celebrating the new year, so there aren't many things to do in the gang. Seeing that the new year is about to end, everyone will be coming back. There are a lot of things to take care of as well. If there is still no news from gang leader, then it doesn't seem too good. At the very least, there will be people's hearts wavering." Sichu Liang nodded and said, "That's right. We need to have an agenda so that there won't be any large fluctuations." Just as they were talking, someone came to reporting to Hall Master, "There are 7 people rushing towards us from 10 li away. It seems like they're from Jianghu." Sichu Liang was stunned. He looked at Hall Master Zhao and said, "At this time of the year, who could it be? The gang that we're on good terms with already came here before the new year. How could they know about this place if they're not familiar with it? Could it be that they're just passing by?" Hall Master Zhao said, "Perhaps. However, could it be that they're here to cause trouble for us?" Sichu Liang shook his head and said, "The numbers aren't right. If they're here to cause trouble, how could a mere 7 people be a match for our entire evil tiger gang? Although most of the gang members aren't in the gang, there are still a few dozen of them." Hall Master Zhao was also confused and said, "Then why are they here? Sichu Liang said, let's just wait and see. We'll keep an eye on them first and see if they're here for us. However, we need to make preparations to welcome them. Someone, notify the brothers in the gang to make preparations to welcome the guests. Also, prepare signal fireworks. If there's a need, notify the brothers that aren't in the gang to come back and help. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, another person came to reporting to Hall Master Sichu, those 7 people are about to reach the entrance of the village. There isn't a large group of people behind them. Sichu Liang stood up and said to Hall Master Zhao, let's go. This road in our village only allows people to enter and not exit. It seems like they're here for our evil tiger gang. Hall Master Zhao also stood up and said, let's go, we're going to welcome the guests. These 7 people really did come quickly. When Sichu Liang and the others arrived at the entrance of the manor, the sound of their horses' hooves could be heard. Looking from afar, the 7 people were all dressed in black and their faces could not be seen clearly. Only when they got closer could everyone see that the 7 people were of the same height, but they were all different. The one at the front was a young man with delicate features. He was as skinny as Sichu Liang, but he carried a large sword on his back. They only saw them arrive at the entrance of the manor and dismount together. Their movements were very nimble and uniform. It was obvious that they had been trained for a long time. When they dismounted, 6 people stood there holding the reins without saying anything. The young man at the front threw the reins in his hands to the person beside him and walked forward himself. He bowed to Sichu Liang on the stairs and said, may I ask if you are the evil tiger gang's Sichu Liang, Hall Master Sichu? Sichu Liang also quickly bowed and said, that is me. May I ask who you are? The young man said with a smile, this one is Chu Xiong Feng of the 10,000 Swords Peak. I have come under the orders of my family's sword master to deliver news about your gang master, Sichu Ping. When Sichu Liang heard this, he was shocked. This 10,000 Swords Peak was not something the evil tiger gang could afford to offend. When did the gang master have any relationship with the 10,000 Swords Peak? He said with a smile, may I ask if Xiaoxia Chu has any proof? Chu Xiongfeng did not get angry. He took out a token from his chest and handed it to Sichu Liang. Sichu Liang took it and looked at it. It was the gang master Sichu Ping's token. He could not help but reveal a smile and said, it really is the gang master's token. Xiaoxia Chu, please come in for a chat. Please. However, he did not return the token to Chu Xiongfeng. Chu Xiongfeng did not seem to mind. The group of 7 followed him into the manor. The horses were naturally given to the evil tiger gang to take care of as they entered the inner hall. In the main hall, everyone sat down as the servants brought in tea. Chu Xiongfeng did not pick up the teacup. Instead, he took out a letter from his chest and handed it to Sichu Liang, saying, Gang Master Sichu has not returned for many days. The gang must be very worried. This is a letter from Gang Master Sichu to your honorable gang. Hall Master Sichu, please open it. Sichu Liang smiled as he received the letter. He opened it and looked at the contents. His calm face revealed a bit of shock. After reading it, he handed the letter to Hall Master Zhao who was beside him. Hall Master Zhao was also very surprised. After reading it, he looked at Sichu Liang and nodded slightly. Sichu Liang turned around and said to Chu Xiongfeng, Xiaoxia Chu, this token is correct. The words on the letter were also written by our gang master. However, the things in the letter are not things that we can immediately reply to. Can I ask Xiaoxia and the others to rest in our gang for a bit and discuss it with us? Chu Xiongfeng said, of course. However, I ask Hall Master Sichu to reply to us as soon as possible. After saying this, he stood up with the other 6 people. Sichu Liang quickly had the servants arrange for Chu Xiongfeng and the others to rest. After Chu Xiongfeng and the others left, Sichu Liang and Hall Master Zhao immediately had their subordinates release the emergency signal for the evil tiger gang to gather the upper echelons of the gang back to the villa to discuss how to deal with the situation. When the signal was sent out, the 2 Hall Masters finally let out a sigh of relief. Hall Master Zhao sat in the main hall. Sichu Liang excused himself and returned to his room first. Sichu Liang quickly walked back to his small room that was not too far away from the main hall. He turned around to take a look before pushing open the door and entering. This small room was very clean. There was a bookshelf near the wall that was filled with books. There was a desk near the window that was filled with brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone. Sichu Liang walked in front of the desk and sat on the chair as he looked outside the window. The tree branches outside the window had already turned green and were swaying in the spring breeze. They were full of life. Sichu Liang's eyes, however, swept past the signs of spring and looked at the white clouds floating in the sky. After a while, he shook his head and rubbed his temples. He took out Sichu Ping's tablet and used the light coming in from outside the window to carefully examine it. Suddenly, he stood up from the chair and placed the tablet on the table. He quickly walked in front of the bookshelf and gently took out a few books. There was a small box behind the bookshelf. Sichu Liang carefully placed the box on the table and opened the lid with one hand, revealing a small porcelain bottle inside. Then, he skillfully picked up a brush and opened the lid of the porcelain bottle. He dipped the brush in some liquid and picked up the tablet with one hand. He used the brush to carefully brush a part of the tablet. Sure enough, on that small part of the tablet, 3 words gradually appeared. It was actually peaceful endurance. When Sichu Liang finished tidying up the things on the table, the words on the tablet had also disappeared. He put the tablet back into his pocket and sat on the chair as he frowned and thought. In the time it took to eat a meal, the sky had already turned dark. Sichu Liang was still sitting there without moving at all. At this time, someone lightly knocked on the door. Sichu Liang replied, "Come in." Someone lightly pushed open the door and came in to report, "Hall Master Sichu, Elder Chu, Hall Master Xing and Hall Master Zhong have already returned. They are currently talking to Hall Master Zhao. Hall Master Zhao told me to inform Hall Master Xing." Sichu Liang said softly, "All right, I got it. I'll be there soon." Sichu Liang waited for a while and seemed to have made a decision. Only then did he calmly stand up and tidy up the clothes on his body. Slowly, he walked out of the room. The room was not very far from the main hall, but Sichu Liang did not walk quickly. The path in the dusk was no different from usual. However, Sichu Liang knew that the evil tiger clan today was different from the evil tiger clan of the past. Chapter 39. When Sichu Liang walked into the hall, there were 3 people whispering to each other. Hall Master Zhao silently sat in his original position and drank tea. It was as if he hadn't moved at all since Sichu Liang left. Sichu Liang's footsteps caused the 3 of them to stop talking. The 3 of them exchanged glances. The white-haired old man did not get up from his chair, but the other 2 stood up. One of them had a medium build and looked like a very capable man. The other was a slightly taller build and had a clean face. He looked like he was in his 40s or 50s. They walked to the center of the hall to welcome Sichu Liang. The 3 of them greeted each other. Sichu Liang asked, "Hall Master Zhong, Hall Master Xing, how was your New Year's at home this year?" The rich middle-aged man said, "It was all right. New Year's with my family is naturally interesting. Compared to Hall Master Sichu staying alone in the gang, I feel a bit uneasy." Sichu Liang waved his hand and said, "I am alone. Isn't it the same wherever I go? Do you want Brother Zhong, who has a bunch of wives, to stay with me? I heard that Brother Zhong just found a young concubine before the New Year's." The capable man's face was a bit red as he hurriedly said, "Hall Master Sichu, you have wronged me. I am only a mortal. I cannot cut off my emotions and desires. I cannot compare to Hall Master Sichu who has received the teachings of an immortal. You can cut off your mortal fate and leave the world of mortals." Hearing this, Sichu Liang said with a strange expression, "Brother Zhong, do you think I am a monk? I am still preparing to find someone to carry on my family line." Hearing this, the 2 of them said, "That's good. We have been waiting for that day." While the 3 of them were chatting, Elder Chu was getting impatient. He lightly coughed. Hearing this, Sichu Liang quickly walked over and bowed. Elder Chu frowned and nodded, indicating for Sichu Liang to sit. Only then did Sichu Liang walk over to the chair across from Elder Chu and sit down. Before he could sit down, Elder Chu impatiently asked, "Little Liang, is there any news about Ping Er?" This elder Chu was an elder in the gang. He had basically watched Sichu Ping and Sichu Ping grow up. Normally, in the hall, he would call them gang master and hall master. Now that he suddenly called them by their nicknames, it seemed like he was very worried about Sichu Ping. Sichu Liang's heart warmed up, and he hurriedly said, "Elder Chu, my cousin is fine, she is just temporarily unable to return to the sect." Hall Master Xing also asked, "What is going on here? Gang leader has always been a steady person. Something must have happened this time. When I asked old Zhao just now, he wouldn't say anything no matter what. He wanted to wait for you. Hurry up and tell us. Don't keep us in suspense." Sichu Liang nodded and took out the letter from his bosom. He stood up and handed it to Elder Chu. Elder Chu took out the letter and read it carefully. His brows furrowed deeper and deeper. After that, Hall Master Xing and Hall Master Zhong also carefully read the letter. After everyone finished reading the letter, the hall fell into a dead silence. Elder Chu was the first to speak, asking, "Little Liang, this letter is real, right?" Sichu Liang nodded and said, "This is indeed my cousin's handwriting, and the time matches as well. It shouldn't be fake." Hall Master Zhong continued, "But this is strange. Why would Myriad Sword Peak accept the gang leader as a disciple? The gang leader has already passed the best time to practice martial arts. Now that she has joined the Myriad Sword Peak, how can she stand out?" Hall Master Xing also said, "The most suspicious thing is that the gang leader actually allowed the Myriad Sword Peak disciples to temporarily manage the gang's affairs while she is away. What does this mean?" Sichu Liang also said, "If gang leader joins the 10,000 Swords Peak, then we will naturally become a branch of the 10,000 Swords Peak. To our evil tiger gang, this can be considered a blessing from the heavens. However, the gang leader can't come back immediately. Could it be that she needs to cultivate high-level martial arts?" Elder Chu frowned and said, "Our little bit of power to the Myriad Sword Peak is like a piece of meat on a fly. Why would they care about it? They even let a few disciples take over. Aren't they placing too much importance on it?" Hall Master Zhao was silent for a while before saying, "There are too many suspicious points in this matter. We should at least let the gang leader come back and give a detailed explanation. Just by finding a few people and a letter, they want us to give our hard-earned territory to others. Isn't this just child's play?" Sichu Liang gave a bitter smile and said, "Then what should we do? Can we not endure it?" The word endure seemed to be especially clear. The rest of the people did not say anything. That's right, what else could they do? In front of absolute martial arts, any schemes or resistance would be futile. However, seeing that everyone was silent, Elder Chu asked, "Where are the Myriad Sword Peak disciples?" Sichu Liang said, "They've all been arranged to rest. They should have finished eating dinner by now." Elder Chu said, "Then let them come over for everyone to meet and discuss the details." Sichu Liang nodded and sent people to invite Chu Xiongfeng and the others. Not long later, the 7 people from the Myriad Sword Peak arrived at the main hall. The people from the evil tiger gang came forward to greet them. After greeting each other, they sat down. Elder Chu said warmly, "Xiaoxia Chu, we are in a remote area here and are lacking in things. I wonder if you can get used to it." Chu Xiongfeng quickly said, "Elder Chu is too courteous. My generation has traveled the Jianghu and it is normal for us to sleep in the wilderness. There is nothing we can't get used to in your gang." Elder Chu stroked his beard and said, "That's good." Then he asked, "Can Xiaoxia Chu explain in detail the situation of our gang leader Sichu?" Chu Xiongfeng smiled and said, "Senior sister Sichu is very fortunate. She was coincidentally chosen by our Myriad Sword Peak's elder Yunfeng and taken in as a disciple. She is currently cultivating in seclusion at the Myriad Sword Peak. Elder Yun is a famous expert in our sect. I'm sure that senior sister Sichu's martial arts will improve even further and enter the ranks of the Jianghu experts. As for the details, Chu is not too clear either. Everything will have to wait for senior sister Sichu to return and ask her in detail." Chu Xiongfeng's words were watertight, and no one was able to get any clues from him. Seeing that no one was speaking, Chu Xiongfeng smiled and said, "Chu is here on orders from my master to temporarily take over the affairs of your gang. May I know how the discussion went?" Although these words were spoken to the crowd, Chu Xiongfeng's eyes were fixed on Elder Chu, who was sitting at the head of the table. Elder Chu saw Chu Xiongfeng's gaze and was about to speak when someone else spoke first. Young hero, Chu wants us to listen to your commands with just a letter. How can we be convinced? Chu Xiongfeng turned his head and saw Hall Master Xing. Chu Xiongfeng asked, Hall Master Xing, what do you think we should do? Hall Master Xing said, no matter what, you have to get past me first and let me experience the swordsmanship of the myriad sword peak. Elder Chu hurriedly stopped him. Hall Master Xing, you can't be so rude. Chu Xiongfeng replied, it's fine. It's a little inappropriate for us to make your faction obey our orders so easily. Since that's the case, I'll spar with Hall Master Xing for a bit. I'm sure that you'll be convinced of our superiority. Sichu Liang hurriedly said, Xiaoxia Chu, Hall Master Xing, since we're all on the same side, let's not go to the practice field. Let's spar in the hall and not harm each other. Is that all right? The two of them nodded in agreement. Hall Master Xing shouted to the outside, bring my weapon over. Not long after, someone brought in a steel spear that was 8 zhong long. It was Hall Master Xing's famous weapon. Hall Master Xing received the spear with one hand and shook it forcefully. The tip of the spear drew a few arcs in the air, and the long body of the spear emitted a woo-woo sound. The members of the evil tiger gang couldn't help but think to themselves, even though Hall Master Xing's figure has become chubby, he hasn't dropped his martial arts. In contrast, the members of the myriad sword peak didn't seem to have noticed the commotion at all. Chu Xiongfeng unsheathed the large sword on his back and walked to the center of the hall with one hand. Hall Master Xing looked at Chu Xiongfeng and muttered in his heart. There were many swordsmen in the pugilistic world, but it was rare for one to use such a large sword. Furthermore, it seemed that the sword was quite heavy, and Chu Xiongfeng was able to carry it with one hand. While Hall Master Xing was deep in thought, Chu Xiongfeng spoke up, Hall Master Xing, please. Hall Master Xing didn't stand on ceremony and said, very well. Xiaoxia Chu, watch my spear. After saying those words, Hall Master Xing leaped forward and thrust his spear toward Chu Xiongfeng's heart. Chu Xiongfeng didn't seem to be in a hurry. He waited until the tip of the spear was right in front of him before taking a step forward and twisting his waist. Still holding his sword with one hand, he lifted it up along with the tip of the spear. Hall Master Xing immediately felt a powerful force coming from the tip of the spear, and his body couldn't help but sway to the side. Thus, he stomped his foot and stabilized himself with a movement technique. Just as he was about to take a breath to regain his balance, he saw Chu Xiongfeng making use of the momentum of the sword to leap into the air. After reaching an extremely high point, he grabbed the hilt of his sword with both hands and swung it down toward Hall Master Xing. Hall Master Xing was shocked. He only knew how to stab and hack with a sword, but who would have thought that someone would actually use it as a saber? Grabbing the tip of the spear with both hands, Hall Master Xing raised his heaven-burning form to meet the attack head-on. In the blink of an eye, the sword and the spear collided, and a loud quang dang sounded. Chu Xiongfeng's sword bounced off the shaft of the Damascus steel spear, and Hall Master Xing was forced to retreat 3 steps. Barely managing to stabilize himself, Hall Master Xing saw Chu Xiongfeng swinging his sword once more, making use of the momentum from the rebound to slash at him once more. Hall Master Xing couldn't help but feel bitter. There was no time for him to change his stance, so he could only raise his heaven-burning form to meet the attack head-on. However, with another quang dang, Chu Xiongfeng's sword bounced off the shaft of the Damascus steel spear. This time, however, Chu Xiongfeng didn't follow up with another move. Instead, he stood there leisurely with the tip of his sword pointed toward the ground as he stared at Hall Master Xing. On the other hand, Hall Master Xing was forced to retreat 4 steps. This time, he wasn't able to hold onto the Damascus steel spear anymore. His legs went soft, and he fell to the ground. Unable to hold on to the Damascus steel spear in his hands anymore, he tossed it aside. When Hall Master Xing finally stood back up, he realized that the webbing between his thumb and forefinger had been torn. A wave of fear welled up in his heart as he muttered, I wonder how much strength is hidden in that skinny body of his. What a godly strength. It's fortunate that it was a sparring session, or else I would have been killed by the other party's attack. Seeing the ashen expression on Hall Master Xing's face, Chu Xiongfeng clasped his fist and said, I admit it. Hall Master Xing returned the gesture and said, I'm impressed. Chapter 40. The exchange between the two could not be said to have happened in an instant, but it had only taken a few breaths of time for victory and defeat to be decided. This caused the jaws of the evil Tiger Gang members to drop to the ground. On the other hand, the 6 people from the 10,000 Swords Peak had normal expressions. From their point of view, this was completely normal. Hall Master Xing sat on the chair with an ashen face, as if he had not yet recovered from the shock. Sichu Liang and the others did not go up to comfort him. Their minds were also quickly turning. They originally felt that they had no choice but to accept the 10,000 Swords Peak sending someone to take over the evil Tiger Gang, but when they saw that it was a youngster, they naturally wanted to give him a show of strength so that he would not look down on the evil Tiger Gang. This way, when the authority of the gang leader was distributed, they would have an advantage. So when Hall Master Xing raised his objection, no one stopped him and instead chose to watch from the side. However, the result was too unexpected. In just 3 moves, Hall Master Xing was defeated. Thinking back to Chu Xiongfeng's 3 moves, the timing of the moves was very clever. Each move was something that Hall Master Xing had no choice but to take on. The positions of the moves were not too tricky and were even wide open. However, the most important thing was the strength of the moves and the power contained in the large sword. It was something that Hall Master Xing could not compare to. It was a great coincidence. If it had been anyone else from the evil Tiger Gang that went up, they would also have had the same result. No wonder the evil Tiger Gang only sent 7 people. These 7 people were equivalent to half of the evil Tiger Gang. Seeing the evil Tiger Gang members' uncertain expressions, Chu Xiongfeng did not give them too much time to think. He held the large sword in his hand and said loudly, Everyone, if there is anyone else who has objections, please stand up and speak. Sichu Liang and the others exchanged glances. Elder Chu stood up and said, Xiaoxia Chu, please put away your sword. We do not have any objections. Chu Xiongfeng saw Elder Chu speak, so he put his large sword back on his shoulder. However, he did not return to his seat. Instead, he looked at the evil Tiger Gang members and asked again, Does anyone have any objections to my 10,000 Swords Peak temporarily taking over the evil Tiger Gang? Sichu Liang and the others all said, Yes, we will follow the gang leader's orders and listen to 10,000 Swords Peak's Xiaoxia Chu. Then, Sichu Liang invited Chu Xiongfeng to take a seat, saying, Clan Master Chu, please take a seat. We will listen to Clan Master Chu's orders. Chu Xiongfeng wasn't polite. He walked to a chair in the front of the hall and sat down. He then said to the evil Tiger Gang members, Everyone, please sit. Thus, everyone sat back down. Chu Xiongfeng said, Everyone, please do not have any misgivings. I am following my sword master's orders to temporarily take over the evil Tiger Gang. All matters will be handed over to clan leader Sichu once she returns. Moreover, before clan leader Sichu returns, the matters of the gang will still be handled by Elder Chu, Hall Leader Sichu, and the others. We will not interfere. We only ask that Hall Leader Sichu give us an explanation before you do anything. Sichu Liang and the others were very puzzled. What was this? Taking over the position of clan leader and not using the clan leader's strength, he did not care about the matters of the gang. Hall Master Xing even looked at his cracked palm in regret. If he knew this would happen, he would not have competed with this person and lost his face for nothing. However, everyone had their own explanations. The evil Tiger Gang was their entire world in their eyes and could not be violated. However, in the eyes of this person, they were nothing more than chicken ribs. This Chu Xiongfeng probably didn't want to come, but because of his master's orders, he decided to not interfere and let them develop on their own. Thinking of this, everyone revealed expressions of relief. Chu Xiongfeng saw that everyone understood his intentions, so he didn't want to stay in the hall for too long. He said, Then I'll have to trouble everyone with the matters of the evil Tiger Gang in the future. We will temporarily stay in the place arranged for us this afternoon. If there is nothing important, do not disturb our cultivation. After saying this, he cupped his hands and bid farewell to the evil Tiger Gang members. The group of people returned to their living quarters. When they returned to their living quarters, Chu Xiongfeng had everyone enter their own rooms and left one person to guard the door. Looking at the 5 people in the room, Chu Xiongfeng said with satisfaction, "Today, the matters of the evil tiger gang have been settled. From today onwards, we will guard this place and wait for the swordmaster's next orders. 2 junior brothers Wang, you should rest well tonight. Tomorrow morning, you will go to Lu Town and watch over that place. If any Jianghu people appear, immediately inform us." 2 of them cupped their hands and agreed. Afterwards, Chu Xiongfeng ordered the rest of the people, "The rest of you will follow our habits in the 10,000 Swords Peak and continue to practice martial arts. Do not slack off." Everyone agreed and went their separate ways. Sichu Liang and the others were in the hall. After a moment of silence, Elder Chu opened his mouth and asked, "Little Liang, where have you arranged for young hero Chu and the others to stay?" He did not address them as Sect Master Chu. Sichu Liang said, "Arrange for them to be in East Room 1 to East Room 7. Elder Chu said, "It's better to let them stay in the VIP rooms." Sichu Liang replied, "All right, I will immediately arrange for people to take care of it." At that time, it was because I read the letter that my heart was in a mess. That's why the arrangements were inappropriate. Elder Chu then said, "How about this? Everyone is tired today. Let's go back and rest first. If there is anything else, we can discuss it tomorrow morning. How about that?" Everyone also left. Sichu Liang leisurely returned to his own room. The room was not lit up with an oil lamp, so it was completely dark. He walked into the familiar darkness and closed the door tightly. He walked in front of his desk and just stood there. He looked at the moon covered by dark clouds outside the window and did not move for a long time. After a while, he seemed to have sorted out his thoughts. Only then did he light up the oil lamp. The bean-sized flame quickly filled the room with light. Sichu Ping picked up a pen and paper and carefully wrote a letter with very small handwriting. Then, he carefully rolled it into a small paper stick and placed it into a metal ring. Following that, he took out 2 empty metal rings and placed 2 small paper sticks into them. Then, he placed the 3 metal rings into his pocket. Only then did he blow out the oil lamp and walk out of the room. After Sichu Liang walked out of the room, he did not walk far away. Instead, he walked into a slightly bigger room right next to his room. When he opened this room, he could hear the gululu sounds of pigeons. So this was a place to raise carrier pigeons. He walked to the innermost corner with familiarity. From a pile of pigeon cages, he found 3 slightly smaller ones and opened them one by one. He took out the metal rings from his pocket and very skillfully put them on the ankles of the 3 pigeons. Finally, he took the 3 cages and walked to the window. He opened the window and opened one of the cages first. He then released a pigeon. That pigeon flew in the air and circled around a bit before landing on the windowsill. It seemed like it did not want to fly out. However, Sichu Liang grabbed the pigeon and threw it into the air again. This time, the pigeon circled around a bit before flying out in one direction. Sichu Liang did not immediately release the second pigeon. He waited quietly for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. When he did not hear any movement, he released the second pigeon. After the second pigeon flew away, he released the third pigeon. The 3 carrier pigeons all flew towards the same place. In the pitch-black night, they carried some sort of mysterious mission. Chu Xiongfeng and the others' rooms were quite a bit of distance away from Sichu Liang's room. They were in different parts of the hall, so they did not notice anything. The evil tiger gang members were already used to the pigeons flying out, so the sound of the 3 pigeons flying out did not catch anyone's attention. After Sichu Liang finished doing all of this, he returned to his own room. This time, he did not light a lamp. Instead, he walked to the side of the Kang bed and slept with his clothes on. Everything in the evil tiger gang fell silent under the moonlit night. Occasionally, there would be a gang member on duty who would walk past unsteadily with sleepy eyes. Everyone had fallen asleep with their own thoughts. In the Zhong family's courtyard in the Guozhuang house, everyone was also sleeping peacefully. Only waves of suppressed coughing could be heard from Grandma's room. Grandma was lying on the Kang bed and using the blanket to tightly cover her mouth. Her ears were turned to the side, but she would occasionally listen in Zhong Xiaohua's direction. Although the moonlight outside the window was bright, the room was still very dark. There was no movement from Zhong Xiaohua's side, but Grandma was worried that she would wake up her beloved grandson and disturb his sweet dreams. However, with her disappointing body, she felt very stuffy in her chest and could not help but cough. She could not walk out of the room, nor did she want to disturb her grandson, so what could she do? What made her feel gratified was that Zhong Xiaohua was sleeping very peacefully. She thought that perhaps she should tell her child's mother to let her live in her relative's wooden hut tomorrow. Only then would she be able to feel at ease. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua seemed to have turned over. Grandma quickly closed her mouth and suppressed the coughing that was already close to her throat. However, how could she suppress this kind of cough? Grandma's throat was itchy and her face was red. When she heard that Zhong Xiaohua was no longer moving, she carefully coughed out. However, because she had suppressed it for a while, the coughing became much more intense. Grandma even felt that some liquid had been coughed out onto the blanket. In the middle of the night, Grandma did not fall asleep. After waiting for the rooster to crow a few times, she felt that it was already dawn. Grandma quickly got up and groped her way out. The small courtyard was still very quiet. Grandma did not hear any other sounds. Presumably, Guo Sufei and Liu Qian had not woken up either. Grandma did not walk to the center of the courtyard. She leaned against the wall outside the room and used a towel to cover her coughing. After the time it took to eat a meal, Grandma heard the door to the central room creak open. Someone came out from inside. Then, she heard Guo Sufei's voice. "Mother, why are you up so early? It's cold outside." Guo Sufei walked over and wanted to help Grandma back to the room. However, Grandma refused to go back and said, "I'm always coughing. I'm afraid that I'll wake Xiaohua up." Guo Sufei's eyes immediately turned red and said, "Then, Mother, come to the central room first." She helped Grandma to the central room. At this time, Liu Qian also got up. She was also very surprised to see Guo Sufei supporting Grandma. She quickly opened the door to the central room and let the two in. Listening to Grandma's continuous coughing, she could not help but think, "I don't know if this spring water really works. Grandma's condition is getting worse." Chapter 41. A new day had begun, and everyone was busy with their own matters. Grandmother was also sitting in the courtyard, enjoying the rare sunshine. Guo Sufei saw that the weather was very good, and the sun was shining brightly. She wanted to take out the quilts and mattresses in the house to dry. First, she hung the quilts in her room and Zhong Xiaolong's room to dry. Then, she went to Grandmother's room to tidy up Grandmother's and Zhong Xiaohua's quilts. But after she walked into the room, the family outside heard her cry out. Grandmother's ears were sharp, and she said, "What's going on?" "Guo Sufei." Then, Guo Sufei's voice came from the room, "It's nothing, Mother. There's a mouse." Zhong Cai, who was fiddling with the farm tools, laughed and said, "You're already so old. Why are you still afraid of that little thing? It's a bit funny." When Zhong Xiaohua heard this, he quickly bounced over and said, "Mother, where's the mouse? I'll help you. I'm the best at catching mice." But he ran into the room and saw his mother sitting by Grandmother's kang. She was holding Grandmother's quilt and sobbing softly. When Zhong Xiaohua saw this scene, he carefully walked over and asked his mother in a low voice, "What's wrong, Mother?" Guo Sufei sobbed weakly and did not speak. Zhong Xiaohua looked at the quilt in his mother's hand and realized that the top of the quilt was black. Zhong Xiaohua did not understand what was going on and asked his mother, "Mother, why are you holding the quilt? Isn't it just dirty? I'll help you wash it, okay?" Hearing her son's obedient words, Guo Sufei was even more sad. She suppressed her sobs and said with a hoarse voice, "Xiaohua, this quilt isn't dirty. It's your grandmother who coughed up blood." Zhong Xiaohua felt a buzzing sound in his head. He was in a daze. He quickly asked, "Then, is Grandma going to die?" Guo Sufei listened to her son's innocent words and her heart felt like she had eaten Chinese gold thread. She said, "Good son, Mother doesn't know either." Zhong Xiaohua said with a sad face, I don't want grandmother to die. Guo Sufei stretched out her arm and pulled her son into her embrace. She stroked her son's hair with her other hand and said, Mother also doesn't want to, but look at Xiaohua. She's almost catching up with Mother. Mother is also old. Grandmother, she will leave us sooner or later. Zhong Xiaohua was about to cry as she said, I don't want to grow taller, Mother. I don't want grandmother to leave me. Guo Sufei had already held back her sobs. She hugged her son and sighed softly. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua thought of Liu Qian's words. He asked, Mother, Sister Liu told me that there are immortals who can live forever. If we find them, will grandma not leave us? Guo Sufei said, Maybe, Xiaohua. That's what the stories say, but no one has ever seen an immortal before. Zhong Xiaohua said, Then I'll go find the immortals and ask them to save grandma. Guo Sufei said lovingly, Good boy. Then she looked at her son. Looking at his clear eyes and anxious expression, she said, No one knows where the immortals are. Where are you going to find them? And it's too late to find them now. Why don't you accompany grandma and let her hear your voice more? Zhong Xiaohua nodded vigorously when he heard this, as if he really understood. At this time, Zhong Cai shouted outside, Xiaohua, have you killed the mice? Guo Sufei also shouted, They've all run away. Where are we going to kill them? Then she said to Zhong Xiaohua, Let's go out, but don't cry when we go out. Don't let your grandmother know. Zhong Xiaohua nodded in agreement. Guo Sufei walked out of the house with the quilt in her arms. Zhong Xiaohua walked behind her with his head down. Guo Sufei went to dry the quilt. Zhong Xiaohua walked to Grandma and said, Grandma, are you thirsty? Shall I get some water for you? Grandma smiled and said, Yes, I'm a little thirsty. Xiaohua, go get some water for Grandma. You're so obedient. Be careful not to burn your hands. It seemed that in Grandma's heart, Zhong Xiaohua was still a 4 or 5-year-old child. Zhong Xiaohua went into the house to get water for Grandma. Guo Sufei originally wanted to dry Grandma's quilt in a slightly hidden place. But after thinking about it, she took a basin and wanted to wash the blood off the quilt first. Liu Qian saw that Guo Sufei wanted to wash the quilt and hurried over to help. When she saw the stain on the quilt, she was also stunned. Guo Sufei saw that Liu Qian saw it. She thought for a moment and said in a low voice, Go and call Xiaolong and the others over. Quietly. Liu Qian nodded and went over to signal a few people to come over. When everyone came over and saw the stains on the quilt that Guo Sufei had placed in the basin, they all stopped talking. The warm sunshine just now couldn't warm their hearts even a little at this moment. Zhong Xiaohua brought the water to Grandma. She first tasted the water with her mouth before putting it in Grandma's hand. Grandma took the water and drank a mouthful. There was a smile on her face as if she was drinking sweet honey water. Grandma took a long breath and coughed a little. When everyone saw this scene under the sun, their hearts were warm. The coldness in their hearts had long been driven away. Everyone seemed to know what they should do. They all walked back to Grandma's side and sat around her. While they were busy with their own things, they looked at their beloved family members. They wanted to imprint her voice and smile deeply in their hearts. Grandma didn't know what others were doing. She just sat in the chair at ease, basking in the warm sunshine. A comfortable smile stayed on her face. She was very peaceful and happy. Guo Sufei was busy washing the quilt and drying it. She also sat beside Grandma and said softly, Nyangqin, what do you want to eat for lunch? I'll make it for you. Grandma thought for a moment and said, Make streaky pork. Guo Sufei said strangely, Nyangqin, you don't usually eat such greasy food? Grandma said, I'm hungry today. I want to eat some. Guo Sufei said, Okay, I'll go to the village entrance to buy some meat later. Zhong Xiaolong immediately said, Nyangqin, I'll go. I should go out more. Guo Sufei agreed. Liu Qian also said, I'll go with you. Don't always carry heavy things with your arms. Be careful not to have problems again. Zhong Xiaolong said with a smile, It's enough to buy 2 catties of meat. How can I not be able to carry it? Liu Qian smiled and didn't say anything. So the two went out together. Grandma narrowed her eyes and guessed that Zhong Xiaolong and them went out. Then she said to Guo Sufei, Sufei, I want to tell you something. Guo Sufei said, okay, Nyang Qin. Wait a moment. I'll get you a cup of water to moisten your throat. Guo Sufei poured another cup of water for Grandma. Then she moved a stool and sat opposite Grandma. She asked Grandma, Nyang Qin, what do you want to say? Grandma said, Sufei, did you vomit on my quilt? Guo Sufei's face was shocked. She immediately said, no, Nyang Qin, no. It's just a little dirty. I'll wash it. Grandma sighed and said, Ari, Sufei, you don't have to hide it from me. I vomited on my own. How can I not know? It's just that I'm not sure. You can ask Xiao Cai and the others to go over and take a look. I can hear it. I know in my heart. Guo Sufei said, Nyang Qin, don't think too much. Your cough will definitely get better. Grandma said with a smile, you silly child. Why are you like Xiao Hua? You're already 40 or 50 years old. You're still comforting your Nyang Qin. Guo Sufei began to wipe her tears again. She cried and said, Nyang Qin tilde. Grandma continued, Sufei, you have to be more open-minded. Birth, old age, illness, and death are unavoidable. That year when your father passed away, I was also sad for a long time before I woke up. At that time, I was only sad for myself and didn't care about you. This time, it's my turn. I have to make you sad again. Ari, there's no other way. Your father and I worked hard our whole lives and didn't let you live a good life. With Xiao Cai taking care of you, I'm relieved. Xiao Long, Xiao Hu, and Xiao Hua are all good children. After I leave, don't let them miss me too much. Be busy with farm work. I will pray to the gods to protect you all in the underworld. Zhong Xiaohua's heart ached when he heard this. He hugged Grandma and said, Grandma, don't worry. I'll protect Nyang Qin well. Grandma stroked Zhong Xiaohua's hair and said kindly, I know that Xiaohua will grow up to be a man and will protect the family. I'm very relieved. Then, Grandma said, Sufei, I don't have any wishes in this life. I'm satisfied to see you and Xiao Cai live a comfortable life without quarrels. It's just that before I leave, I don't see Xiao Long get married and hold a great-grandchild. It's a bit regretful. I think Liu Qian is a good child. You must find a way to marry her. That's our family's Xiao Long's good fortune. Everyone surrounded their grandmother and listened to her speak. In their sadness, they did not notice that there were two people who were walking to the gate of the small courtyard. When the two of them heard the two words Liu Qian, they stopped in their tracks and listened carefully to what their grandmother was saying in the small courtyard. Guo Sufei continued, Nyang Qin, you're right. Liu Qian is a good child. There's nothing to nitpick about her words and actions. Moreover, her appearance and figure are 1 in 100. Being able to marry into our family is because Xiao Long accumulated good karma in his previous life. But Guo Sufei wanted to say something but stopped. She didn't want to disturb her mother's good dream. However, there was a big gap between their family and the Liu family. If she rashly promised her mother now and couldn't fulfill it in the future, wouldn't her mother be unable to rest in peace in the afterlife? Grandma seemed to know what she wanted to say. She patted Guo Sufei's hand and said, Sufei, Liu Qian isn't a child who despises the poor and loves the rich. If she likes our family's Xiao Long, she would have already married him. Mr. Liu is educated and reasonable, I think he would agree. You should find time to sound Liu Qian out. If she doesn't have any feelings for our family's Xiao Long, then forget it. Don't force her. I heard from Xiao Hua that Xiao Long's injury will be healed soon. You should also let her go back quickly. Staying in our family is not good for Liu Qian's reputation. Although we saved her, she has also taken care of our family for so long. Guo Sufei said, okay, Nyang Qin. I'll tell Liu Qian tomorrow and let her go home quickly. Grandma heard this and a trace of disappointment appeared on her face. At this time, someone ran in from outside and said, Qian is not going home. Chapter 42. The person who came in was Zhong Xiaolong. The two of them stood at the door and listened to the conversation between grandmother and mother. Liu Qian's face was red with embarrassment. Zhong Xiaolong listened and looked at Liu Qian's expression. When he saw grandmother's disappointed expression, he couldn't help but pull Liu Qian's hand and rushed into the courtyard. He said with a happy heart, Qian won't go home. Liu Qian blushed and wanted to withdraw her hand, but for some reason, she didn't do it. Instead, she obediently followed behind Zhong Xiaolong and ran into the courtyard. As he ran, he thought to himself, thank the gods and Buddhas, this layer of window paper has finally been pierced through. Some time ago, I was still worried that if Guo Sufei asked me again, how should I deal with it? Now, it's all gone because of Zhong Xiaolong's impulsiveness. This Zhong Xiaolong is really my lucky star. It's fate. Everyone looked at the two people who rushed into the courtyard inexplicably. When they stood in front of grandmother, they saw Zhong Xiaolong holding Liu Qian's hand. Their faces immediately showed an understanding expression. So it was like this. Zhong Xiaolong saw everyone's ambiguous gaze and then noticed Liu Qian's soft and smooth hand in his hand. For a moment, he didn't know whether to let go or continue holding it. Guo Sufei saw her son's embarrassment and quickly asked, Xiaolong, just now you said that Qian won't go home. Is it Qian's idea? Zhong Xiaolong pulled a long face and didn't know how to answer. At this time, the little hand in his hand gently scratched his finger. He understood and said happily, yes, mother, it was Qian who told me. Everyone was overjoyed. Grandmother was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Guo Sufei walked in front of Liu Qian and asked in disbelief, Qian, this is a lifelong event. You have to think carefully. Don't regret it in the future. Others didn't think too much about it. They knew that Guo Sufei wanted to confirm Liu Qian's thoughts. Liu Qian was happy in her heart. This family was really simple. This should be the advice of her family, but they said it first. Liu Qian also knew that this time, she couldn't hesitate like last time. She finally nodded slightly, then broke free from Zhong Xiaolong's hand and ran out. Guo Sufei saw and quickly pushed her son and said, why aren't you chasing? As if awakening from a dream, Zhong Xiaolong said, okay. But after taking a few steps, he came back and said, Father, give me some money. We went out to buy meat and didn't bring any money. Zhong Cai hurriedly took out some silver from his bosom and gave it to Xiaolong. Xiaolong took it and quickly ran out to catch up with Liu Qian, who was obviously waiting for him outside the courtyard. When Grandma heard that Zhong Xiaolong had run far away, she smiled and said, this child is really fated with Qian. Even without money, he can still turn it into an opportunity. When I heard what you said just now, I thought that there was no chance between him and Qian. Guo Sufei also said emotionally, yeah, last time I asked Qian for her opinion, but she seemed to be unwilling. I didn't know how to ask again. Now it's all settled. Zhong Cai also said happily, Xiaohua, go to the entrance of the village and get me some wine. Let me be happy too. Zhong Xiaohua said, okay. She got up and ran out. When she ran far away, Guo Sufei asked, did you give Xiaohua any money? Zhong Cai said gloomily, no, I'll wait for him to come back. In the next few days, the Zhong family was a scene of joy and harmony. Liu Qian would slightly blush when she saw Zhong Xiaolong and deliberately avoid him. Zhong Xiaolong would also be inexplicably at a loss and made a lot of jokes. The family looked at the awkwardness between the two and shared the sweetness of their love. Grandma's expression was also very good, but she was getting thinner day by day. After not seeing her for a few days, she could feel that she had lost a lot of weight. Guo Sufei was happy for her son and sad for her mother. Others couldn't understand Grandma's situation, but Zhong Xiaohua could feel that Grandma's situation was not good. One day, he couldn't help it and secretly pulled Guo Sufei and said, Mother, I want to talk to you about something. Guo Sufei was very puzzled by her youngest son's actions and said, what trouble did you get into? Why are you so sneaky? Zhong Xiaohua said angrily, Mother, when did I get into trouble for you? Guo Sufei touched his head and said with a smile, then what's the matter? Zhong Xiaohua said sadly, Mother, I can feel that something is floating away from Grandma's body. It floats away a little, Grandma is a little thinner, and I also feel that there is not much of it left on Grandma's body. Guo Sufei said angrily, you child, What nonsense are you talking about? Zhong Xiaohua argued. That's right, mother, I really feel it. I told Sister Qianqian before and she believed me. What did Sister Qianqian say? Guo Sufei asked curiously. Sister Qianqian said that it's because Grandma loves me the most, and I care about Grandma the most, so I can feel her physical condition. But she said that it's not easy to explain, anyway, some close relatives can know. Zhong Xiaohua answered seriously. When Guo Sufei heard this, she left Zhong Xiaohua and hurried to find Zhong Cai. Zhong Xiaohua saw that his mother cared about what he said and was not like what he thought, so he was very happy and went to accompany Grandma. Guo Sufei saw Zhong Cai and told Zhong Xiaohua's words to Zhong Xiaohua. Zhong Cai thought for a moment and said, I've heard of such things before. What Xiaohua said may be true. It seems that we have to make some preparations first. When Guo Sufei heard this, she could only nod sadly. However, she immediately asked Zhong Cai, what about Qianqian and Xiaolong's matter? Firstly, mother wants to see Xiaolong get married. Secondly, if mother really goes, then Xiaolong and Qianqian's matter will have to be pushed back. I don't know what will happen. Zhong Cai said, why don't we go to Liu Qian's house to propose marriage in a few days? It's best if we can do it before mother leaves. If not, we can settle this matter first. Guo Sufei also nodded and said, then I'll ask Qianqian's opinion first. That night, Guo Sufei told Liu Qian about the marriage proposal. She thought that Liu Qian would refuse like last time, but unexpectedly, although Liu Qian was very shy under the light, she still nodded without hesitation. This made Guo Sufei feel very gratified. She was a good child who could pick up and let go. Knowing that Grandma wanted to see her and Xiaolong's happiness, she no longer had any scruples and made a wise choice. This also made Guo Sufei firmly believe that the daughter-in-law that her whole family fancied was really the best daughter-in-law in the world. The next day, Zhong Cai prepared a gift and took Zhong Xiaohua to Liu Qian's house in Barley Gully to discuss the engagement. Zhong Xiaohua was also very happy. She missed Butcher Liu's streaky pork very much. Barley Gully was some distance away from Guozhuang House. Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua hurried. When they arrived at the village entrance, it was already late in the morning. Zhong Cai's body was really a bit tired after his illness. He sat on a big stone at the village entrance to rest. Zhong Xiaohua was as if nothing had happened. Even her breathing did not change. This made Zhong Cai envious of the young person's body. In fact, the last time Zhong Xiaohua came, she was also panting. Compared to Zhong Cai, she was much better. However, she definitely did not feel that she was not tired at all. After Zhong Cai rested, the two of them got up again. Under Zhong Xiaohua's lead, the two of them came to Mr. Liu's house. Mr. Liu's house was still the same. The door was also open. However, Zhong Xiaohua shouted for a long time, but no one answered. Zhong Xiaohua thought that there was no one in the house. So, she went in with Zhong Cai with the gift. Walking into the courtyard, Zhong Cai saw the picturesque flowers and plants in the courtyard. Although spring had not arrived and there were no flowers blooming, he could still see the exquisiteness of the courtyard and the owner's elegant taste. He could not help but sigh. Only such an environment could raise such an outstanding child like Liu Qian. Of course, he also had expectations in his heart. If his small courtyard could also be like this, he would be satisfied in this life when he was old and could retire in such an environment. While Zhong Cai was looking at the small courtyard, Zhong Xiaohua's eyes went to the side room next to the courtyard. Zhong Xiaohua's logic was very simple. Since the courtyard door was not locked, then he must be at home. And after shouting for a long time and no one answered, then he must be busy with something. What could a scholar be busy with? It was nothing more than writing and drawing. Liu Qian said that there was a study room next to the central room. Perhaps Mr. Liu was in the study room. Sure enough, in the side room on the right, she saw a familiar back. It was Mr. Liu. His back was facing the door and he was writing something on the table. Zhong Xiaohua pulled her father who was walking towards the central room and pointed at Mr. Liu's back. Only then did Zhong Cai stop. Turning around, he followed Zhong Xiaohua to the door of the study room. Zhong Xiaohua was about to walk in, but she was stopped by her father. Zhong Cai gestured for her to be quiet and then stopped. Zhong Xiaohua knew what her father meant. He was afraid of disturbing Mr. Liu, so she quietly stood beside her father. The father and son stood at the door of the study room and waited for a while. Mr. Liu was still doing his own thing and had no intention of stopping. Zhong Xiaohua felt a bit bored and was about to say something to her father when she suddenly heard footsteps coming from the courtyard door. The two turned around to see that it was Liu Qian's brother, Liu Kai, who had returned. Liu Kai entered the house and saw two people standing in the courtyard. After careful identification, he discovered that it was Zhong Cai and his son. A smile appeared on his face as he hurried forward to greet them. Looking at his father who was busy in the study room, he said to Zhong Cai and Liu Qian with embarrassment, "My father is like this. When he is busy with his own things, he throws all of the surrounding matters to the back of his mind. When he is done, he will naturally come out. Uncle, please come to the central room." He then took the gift and politely led Zhong Cai and Liu Qian to the central room and poured tea for them. Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua had walked for almost the entire morning and were really thirsty. Taking the tea, they gulped it down. As they drank, they thought, the taste of this tea really isn't as good as ours. Liu Kai saw that the two had finished drinking tea and rested for a bit before asking, "Uncle, why did you suddenly come to our house today? Didn't Qianqian come back with you? Is she all right?" Zhong Cai hurriedly said, "Qianqian didn't come back with us today. She is fine at our house. I'm here today to discuss something with Mr. Liu." Chapter 43. Liu Kai casually asked, "What's the matter?" Zhong Cai smiled and said, "I'll tell Mr. Liu later." Liu Kai also smiled and nodded. He then asked Zhong Cai about Liu Qian and Zhong Cai answered one by one. Zhong Xiaohua also called him Brother Liu and said a lot of good things about Liu Qian. Liu Kai listened with a smile. Liu Kai sat with Zhong Cai for a while. Seeing that it was getting late, he said to Zhong Cai, "Uncle and Xiaohua, please sit here for a while. I don't know when my father will be done. I have to go to Uncle's place to say hello. It's better to go to his place for lunch." Zhong Cai waved his hand and said, "Nephew, you don't have to be so polite. Just eat whatever you want." Liu Kai stood up and said, "That won't do. It's not easy for Uncle to come here. We have to be the hosts. I remember that Xiaohua likes to eat red braised pork. I'll let you eat to your heart's content this afternoon." Zhong Xiaohua stuck out her tongue and said, "Then, thank you Brother Liu." Liu Kai smiled and said, "You sweet-tongued brat." After saying that, he quickly walked out. Only Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua were left waiting in the room. The two drank tea as they waited. After waiting for a while, Mr. Liu still didn't come out. At this time, a loud voice came from outside the door, "Brother Zhong, you're finally here." Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua both smiled. It must be Butcher Liu. Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua quickly stood up. Just as they walked to the door, they bumped into Butcher Liu who was walking briskly towards them. Butcher Liu affectionately held Zhong Cai's hand and said, "Brother Zhong, I haven't seen you for a few days. I really missed you. Is your leg okay?" "Millimeter, it looks like it's healed." Zhong Cai also smiled and said, "That's right. Thanks to younger brother, my injury has already healed. As a matter of fact, my leg didn't hurt too much when I walked from the Guozhuang house to here this morning." Butcher Liu said, "Heaven helps the worthy. Brother Zhong is an honest man, he will definitely be rewarded." "Oh right, how are your two sons' injuries?" Zhong Cai said, "Little Tiger's injuries are all healed, and Little Dragon is almost there." Butcher Liu said, "That's great. It's going to be spring plowing soon, so we won't have to worry about the family anymore. Let's go inside and talk." Only then did everyone return to their seats. Just as they sat down, before Butcher Liu could even take a sip of water, Mr. Liu also entered the room. Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua hurriedly stood up again and went forward to greet him. Mr. Liu returned the greeting and invited them to sit down. Mr. Liu said apologetically, Brother Zhong, you've been here for half a day. I was in the middle of painting, so it was rude of me not to welcome you. Zhong Cai hurriedly said, It's okay, younger brother was busy with work. We'll just wait in the room. Besides, there's still Liu Kai. He was chatting with us and just left. Younger brother, are you done with your painting? Mr. Liu glanced at Butcher Liu and said, Almost. This fellow's loud voice interrupted my train of thought. Let's continue in the afternoon. Butcher Liu said innocently, I didn't know you were painting. Besides, I was born with a loud voice. If I didn't wake you up, you would have left Brother Zhong hanging here. Mr. Liu said, You're always right. I won't talk about you anymore. Then he said to Zhong Cai, I also have this problem. When I'm writing or painting, I forget about the things around me. It's been like this for a long time, and it can't be changed. Come, please have some tea. After he finished speaking, he picked up his teacup and took a sip. Then he said regretfully, This tea is much worse than Brother Zhong's. I really miss the tea I drank last time. Zhong Cai smiled and said, Then younger brother Liu should go to the Guozhuang house more often. Otherwise, you can move in there and drink it every day. Mr. Liu smiled and said, Many things are easier said than done. The few of them sat and chatted for a while. After asking each other about the situation, Mr. Liu asked, Brother Zhong, why did you come to Bali Valley this time? Zhong Cai said, Younger brother Liu, I came this time because I have something very important to discuss with you. Mr. Liu nodded and said, Elder brother, tell me about it. Zhong Cai continued, Qianqian has stayed in our house for so long. Everyone in our family likes her very much. Also, my eldest son, Zhong Xiaolong, is in love with her. I came this time to discuss with you whether we can become in-laws. After Zhong Cai finished speaking, he stared at Mr. Liu, hoping to see a smile or joy on his face. However, he didn't see any expectant expression. Instead, Mr. Liu was clearly stunned. Then he frowned, as if he wanted to refuse. Butcher Liu, who was beside him, had always been a straightforward person. This time, he didn't interrupt. His gaze moved from Zhong Cai to Mr. Liu, and then from Mr. Liu to Zhong Cai. It was a bit thought-provoking. After a while, Mr. Liu opened his mouth and said, Brother Zhong, you're a straightforward person. I'll get straight to the point with you. Let's say whatever we have to say and not hide anything. What do you think? Zhong Cai naturally agreed. Mr. Liu continued, Before Qianqian's mother passed away, her only wish was for me to find a good husband for Qianqian. These years, many people have come to our house to propose marriage, but I haven't agreed to any of them. First, Qianqian isn't satisfied. Second, I don't think they can bring happiness to Qianqian. Also, I know that Qianqian has liked to read since she was young. Her wish has always been to find a knowledgeable husband. I know that Xiaolong is a good child and I'm not worried about his character. However, he doesn't seem to be literate. I'm afraid that when he's with Qianqian in the future, their interests won't be the same. Also, Qianqian hasn't done farm work since she was young. Needlework is naturally no problem for her at home, but when she's with Xiaolong in the future, she won't be able to do farm work. Also, Qianqian and Xiaolong have only known each other for a month or so. How could they fall in love so quickly? Qianqian may have a good impression of Xiaolong. This is normal. After all, Xiaolong saved Qianqian before. If Qianqian wants to marry him because of this, it's too childish. When Zhong Cai heard these words, the expression on his face was a bit awkward. He thought that based on his previous experience of dealing with Mr. Liu, he felt that he was a very easy person to talk to. Moreover, he seemed to admire Xiaolong very much. Since Liu Qian had agreed, there shouldn't be any problems here. However, Zhong Cai was wrong. His admiration was limited to the admiration of a hot-blooded farmer in the countryside. It wasn't from the perspective of a father-in-law. Moreover, Xiaolong and Liu Qian lived in different worlds. Although they were both in the countryside, one was studying, and the other was farming. They really didn't have a common language. It was inevitable that there would be estrangement in their future life. Everything was natural for Zhong Cai, who was marrying a wife, to see. However, Mr. Liu, who wanted to marry his daughter, had to think very carefully. Zhong Xiaohua was also stunned. He also didn't expect that Mr. Liu, who looked very amiable, would refuse. However, he didn't know what to say. He could only look at his father and hope that his father could persuade Mr. Liu. Zhong Cai said, "Mr. Liu worries too much. In marriage, the first thing is that both parties are in love. Since Xiaolong and Qianqian are willing, then they can definitely live a good life. Brother, you said that there is no common topic. I think that in the future, I will let Qianqian teach Xiaolong more. Won't it be cultivated slowly? There is also farm work. Qianqian doesn't know how to do farm work. Naturally, we won't let her do it. Our family has 4 strong laborers. We definitely won't let Qianqian work in the field." Mr. Liu sighed and said, "Didn't I just say that some things are easier said than done? In addition, Liu Kai hasn't gotten engaged yet. Liu Qian, as the younger sister, getting engaged first isn't too good." Zhong Cai also forgot this point. Yes, farmers had the habit of marrying the elder brother first and then the younger sister. The elder brother's marriage hadn't been settled yet. As the younger sister, she naturally didn't have the qualifications to consider it. Zhong Cai was also a bit speechless. At this time, Liu Kai returned. He didn't notice the awkward atmosphere in the room. He said to Mr. Liu and Butcher Liu, "Father, second uncle, the food is ready. Please invite Uncle Zhong and Xiaohua over to eat." Mr. Liu looked at Zhong Cai and said with a smile, "Brother Zhong, let's go. Let's put this matter aside for now. You and I will think about it again. Let's go eat first." Butcher Liu also pulled Zhong Xiaohua's hand and said, "Let's go. Let's not talk about this anymore. Eating is most important. Does Xiaohua want to eat red braised pork?" Butcher Liu's wine and food were naturally more sumptuous than Zhong Cai's, but Zhong Cai didn't have a good appetite. In the face of Mr. Liu and Butcher Liu's attentive hospitality, he didn't eat too much. Only Zhong Xiaohua ate the most. Firstly, he was still growing and had a good appetite. Secondly, in his opinion, his elder brother and sister Qianqian were very compatible. The two of them would definitely be very happy together. He firmly believed that this marriage would definitely happen. Therefore, he was only a bit depressed about Mr. Liu's rejection just now. Now that he had put it aside, he didn't have the same worries as his father. As for the table full of food, of course he would let go of his cheeks and eat as much as he could. Seeing that he was eating so happily, Butcher Liu's wife and Liu Yeye were also smiling like flowers. They kept putting delicious food into his bowl and urged him to eat more. Although Zhong Cai didn't have an appetite, seeing his son eating so happily, he was also slightly happy. Mr. Liu beside him would chat with him from time to time. Butcher Liu also frequently raised his cup to him. Liu Kai had already asked his father in private earlier and knew the reason for Zhong Cai's unhappiness. Therefore, he didn't say much at the table and only ate by himself. The meal was quickly finished. Everyone rested at Butcher Liu's house for a while. Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaohua bid farewell to everyone. Mr. Liu wanted to ask them to stay for a while longer, but seeing that it was already late and that they still had a long way to go, he didn't force them to stay. The group of people sent Zhong Cai and Liu Yeye to the village entrance before turning around to leave. At this time, Butcher Liu's family members also knew the purpose of the Zhong family's visit. Liu Yeye said to Mr. Liu, Uncle Zhong is right. My elder sister really likes Zhong Xiaolong. She even mentioned it the last time I went over." Mr. Liu sighed and said, "A grown girl can't be kept at home. But this matter of living life isn't something that can be solved with just feelings." Chapter 44. On the way back from Ba Li Go, Zhong Cai kept thinking about what Mr. Liu said. "I agreed to let Qianqian take care of Xiaolong because I wanted her to repay my kindness. The hero saves the beauty and the beauty repays the hero with her body. That is a legendary story. I never thought about it. Now that Xiaolong's injury has recovered, I want to bring Qianqian back in a few days. It's not good for her to always stay at Brother Zhong's place." What could Zhong Cai say? There was a gap between his family and the Liu family. Xiaolong was a farmer. Compared to Liu Qian, a well-educated girl, he was indeed unworthy. These days of getting along, in the eyes of the Zhong family, Liu Qian was a golden phoenix. The Zhong family didn't have a parasol tree, so how could the phoenix fall? Although Liu Qian really liked Zhong Xiaolong and was willing to live with the Zhong family, who knew what it would be like when they really lived together in the future? Rather than being upset in the future, it was better not to be together now. It was a pity for Liu Qian, this good daughter-in-law, and Xiaolong's infatuation. Zhong Cai sighed as he walked. He sighed all the way to the Guozhuang house. His brows didn't loosen. At home, Zhong Xiaolong and the others were naturally waiting, hoping that Zhong Cai could bring back good news. But when they saw Zhong Cai enter the door with a gloomy face, they knew that things didn't go well. Zhong Cai entered the house and sat on the chair. Zhong Xiaolong quickly poured water for him. Zhong Cai drank the water and rested for a while. Then, he told them about what happened at Mr. Liu's house. Everyone was nervous and didn't speak. Guo Sufei asked Zhong Cai, "Do you want to tell mother about this?" Zhong Cai thought for a while and said, "Don't tell her first. Mother knows that we went to Ba Li Go. If there is good news, she will be the first to tell. Since we don't tell her, she must know that it's not good news." "Oh right, where's Liu Qian?" Guo Sufei pointed to the inner room and said, "When she saw you come back, this child was shy and hid first. I'll call her out now and tell her what her father said. Let her pack her things first." Zhong Xiaolong said from the side, "Mother, I'll go call her. I don't think Qianqian will go back. There's no need to pack her things first." Guo Sufei looked lovingly at Zhong Xiaolong, who was in love, and said, "Okay, you go. Maybe Qianqian can persuade her father." Not long after, Liu Qian followed Zhong Xiaolong out of the room. Her face was a little pale. She looked at everyone and didn't say anything. She quietly sat down on a chair in the corner. Everyone also sat down and looked at Liu Qian quietly. Actually, in Liu Qian's heart, she was racking her brains and could not understand what her father meant. Ever since she was young, her father had always followed her wishes and had never gone against her wishes. She had the final say in the matter of transferring her husband. In the past, there were countless people who came to propose marriage, but her father had never expressed his opinion. However, based on her own likes and dislikes, this was indeed strange. She had decided, but her father wanted to oppose it. Could it be that he was afraid that Uncle Zhong would cheat him? However, it shouldn't be. Could it be that he really wanted her brother to get married first and then consider her? Thinking of this, Liu Qian was also troubled. Liu Kai's vision was surprisingly high. He didn't even like the girls in the nearby villages. If she waited for him to get married first, wouldn't she become an old lady? Liu Qian raised her head and looked at everyone's eager eyes. She forced a smile and said, "I don't quite understand what my father means. In a few days, when my father comes to pick me up, I will ask him properly." Then she looked at Zhong Xiaolong and nodded at him. Only then did Zhong Xiaolong reveal a trace of a smile from his face. This night was destined to be a depressing night. Everyone didn't eat well for dinner. They hurriedly ate a little and then cleaned up. When Guo Sufei was delivering food to her grandmother asked if Zhong Cai had brought back good news. Just as Guo Sufei was about to stutter, her grandmother said, "It's okay, Sufei. I know our family's situation very well. These children are very outstanding, but our family's situation is like this. It's normal for others to dislike us. Let the children leave it to fate. If it's not a family, they will enter the same house. Our daughter-in-law will marry over sooner or later." When Guo Sufei heard this, she was both happy and worried. She was happy because her mother could see more clearly than herself. She was worried because her mother's last wish could not be fulfilled. She was a bit unfilial. She was worried because her mother's last wish could not be fulfilled. After dinner, everyone was not in the mood to work. They chatted for a while and then went to sleep. Only Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei discussed in low voices in the central room for a long time before returning to their own room. There was no oil lamp in the inner room. Guo Sufei groped around in the dark and got on the kang. She laid there and was still thinking about the things that she discussed with Zhong Cai. At this time, she heard Liu Qian tossing and turning and couldn't sleep well. She asked her, "Are you thinking about your father's words?" "Yes, auntie." Liu Qian answered vaguely. Guo Sufei said, Qian, in fact, your father is also good to you. After all, you are still young and haven't experienced many things. Your life experience is also lacking. Your father has his own ideas and hopes that you can live a happy life. We all understand. After all, a family like ours can't give you much. When your father was young, it was because of the family's financial situation that he didn't let your mother take good care of her body. This caused his lifelong regret, so he values this very much. Most importantly, I think he wants to find a scholar for you. He and your brother are both scholars. Naturally, they hope that your husband is also a scholar. You two can recite poems and write couplets. This kind of life is what you should have. As for Xiaolong, he is my own son. Of course, I think that he is very good. However, our family's financial situation was indeed not good back then, so we didn't let him study. This was also forced by life. Who doesn't want their children to be successful? I know, auntie. I now vaguely understand father's intentions, but in my heart, I still feel that reciting poems and being romantic is bliss. You fetch water and I water the garden, you plough the field and I weave cloth is also a kind of bliss. The two people in the family have the same heart and love each other. Although they are somewhat poor, they can change it through their own hands. I grew up in the countryside, so I don't have to worry about my mother's health. My body is very good. Although I haven't done farm work since I was young, I believe that if I do, I won't be worse than others. Liu Qian said, very unconvinced. Guo Sufei smiled and said, Qian, you are really a child who doesn't admit defeat. In fact, marriage is often not just a matter between two people. You have to integrate into a new family and adapt to their life. You also have to let them accept you. It is not just your husband who can accept you. Moreover, there are many small things like oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and other small things in the family. Any small thing will make your life unhappy. Liu Qian said, Auntie, I know all about these things. When I was at home, father and brother didn't know how to do housework. I did everything. I believe that I am fully prepared for all of these. And during the time I lived here, I feel that the atmosphere at home is very good. It is very harmonious. I can feel a feeling here that I can't enjoy in my home. I feel that I can integrate into this family very well. Her voice became softer and softer, as if she was embarrassed. Also, the most important thing is that I think Xiaolong is very good. He is very good in all aspects. I don't want to lose the opportunity to make my life happy because of family circumstances. In fact, I have hesitated before. I feel that Xiaolong is illiterate and there is nothing to say to me. I also thought that I can teach Xiaolong to read and write. He also agreed. I think that we will live a good life and you won't have to worry. Liu Qian's voice was so low that it could not be heard. Fortunately, it was dark and Liu Qian's face was already red. She was able to say all these words. Guo Sufei was very gratified when she heard this. She also comforted Liu Qian, Qian, today you have said all these. Auntie is very happy. You also saw that our family likes you very much. Not only Xiaolong, your uncle, and I also sometimes see you as our daughter-in-law. Xiaohua and Xiaohu also want to call you sister-in-law. We will do our best to marry you. Do you still remember the last time in Lu Town? Didn't that bully compensate us with money? Liu Qian said, Oh, yes. If you didn't mention this, I would have almost forgotten. That is not a small sum of money. Guo Sufei said, Just now, I discussed with your uncle. If your father is really poor because our family is poor and doesn't have enough money to let you live a good life, we plan to exchange the banknotes. I believe that this amount will definitely satisfy your father. Liu Qian immediately stopped her. She said, Auntie, this money must not be used now. If the bully has an ambush in Lu Town's bank, then wouldn't we be walking into a trap? If we are not 100% sure, we must not do this. Otherwise, we will not be able to live a normal life, let alone let my father be relieved. Moreover, my father is not a person who only cares about money. He must have other ideas. Everything will wait for him to come. Guo Sufei also said, that's right. I also said that to your uncle. But your uncle seems to have drilled himself into a dead end. He is afraid that your father will take you away, so he thought of this method. Later, when your father comes, we will properly ask him about his thoughts. Anyway, I feel that if Xiaolong does not look for you, he will not take a fancy to other girls. Maybe he will not look for other girls for the rest of his life. Liu Qian smiled and said, Auntie, look at what you are saying. How can I be that good? It is also our fate that I can meet Xiaolong. Guo Sufei said, yes, it is fate. But fate is determined by the heavens. It depends on the person to be able to turn fate into a real family. The heavens do not care about this. We should go to bed early and have enough energy to take care of our family. Liu Qian said, okay, Auntie. You should also go to bed early. Liu Qian told Guo Sufei about her worries. She felt very relaxed and fell asleep in a short while. Guo Sufei heard Liu Qian's light snoring and felt happy. Even if this kind of girl could not be her daughter-in-law, she wanted to wish her happiness. Thinking about it, she also fell asleep. Only in the opposite house, Zhong Cai and Zhong Xiaolong could not fall asleep. They did not know when they fell asleep. Chapter 45. The next morning, the sun still rose. The Zhong family was preparing for the spring plowing. Zhong Xiaolong was obviously absent-minded. He looked at Liu Qian from time to time, but Liu Qian acted as if nothing had happened. Liu Qian's calmness made Zhong Xiaolong's heart more and more uneasy. He finally found a chance to pull Liu Qian to the side and asked her softly, what do you plan to do? Liu Qian also had some intention of teasing him. She smiled and said, what do you mean? Zhong Xiaolong was a little unhappy and said, your father is coming to pick you up. Are you preparing to go home? Liu Qian said, yes, my father is coming to pick me up. Naturally, I want to go back to my own home. Zhong Xiaolong's face was a little pale and said, I knew it. The words you said before were all to comfort me so that my injuries would heal sooner. Now that my injuries are healed, you won't lie to me anymore. You want to go back to your stable home. Our small courtyard probably doesn't have anything to attract you. Liu Qian saw that Zhong Xiaolong was really taking it seriously. She quickly put away her teasing expression and said, Xiaolong, look at what you're saying. Do you think that what I said before was to comfort you? Don't you know what I'm thinking? Zhong Xiaolong was stunned and said, it's not that I don't believe you. But at this juncture, you're so calm, and my heart is so anxious that it's about to burst into flames. Of course, I want to ask you what solution you have. Liu Qian smiled and said, you usually look very smart, but in the end, you've fallen into a cliché. Isn't there a saying, when the water comes, escape through the earth, when the soldiers come, block them? Of course, my father wants me to go back and will come to pick me up. But whether I go back or not, isn't it up to me? Usually, my father goes along with my matters. This time, it's a little unexpected. I think I should wait for my father to come and ask him properly. Once I know the reason, there will naturally be a solution. Why are you in a hurry? Zhong Xiaolong smiled and said, I'm not as confident as you are. Of course, I'm confused because I'm concerned. Moreover, I think that we should take the initiative to talk to your father. It's better than waiting here for your father to find us. Liu Qian looked at Zhong Xiaolong and praised, you are right. If we take the initiative to attack, we will have the initiative in our hands. When my father comes, we will be at a disadvantage. Maybe there will be other changes. Ian, why don't I go home first and see the situation first? Zhong Xiaolong was embarrassed and said, I just had a little idea, I didn't think as deeply as you did. Moreover, I was thinking that I should accompany you. My injuries have already recovered, so walking for half a day shouldn't be a problem. Liu Qian pondered for a moment and her eyes lit up as she said, your idea is even better. Let's go find my father and see what he's up to. Zhong Xiaolong said worriedly, Qianqian, What if your father doesn't change his mind and insists that you go back? Liu Qian said slyly, that won't happen. I naturally have a way to deal with my father. He will agree. Zhong Xiaolong was still worried and said, I'm talking about if. What if? Liu Qian said seriously, Brother Xiaolong, you must know my thoughts. There are many things that we haven't said to each other clearly. However, you must believe me. I will accompany you. At the end, her face turned red and her head couldn't help but lower. Zhong Xiaolong gathered his courage and reached out to pull the soft hand in front of him. He said in a low voice, Qianqian, you are so good. This time, Liu Qian didn't let him pull her. She broke free from his hand and said, you should think about when to go to 8 Mile Groove first. After saying that, she ran away. Zhong Xiaolong looked at Liu Qian's back and savored it for a long time. The uneasiness in his heart had long disappeared. When Zhong Xiaolong returned to everyone's sight, the horn of war had already sounded in his heart. He walked in front of Zhong Cai and said, Father, Liu Qian's father didn't say when to pick her up. Zhong Cai looked at Zhong Xiaolong and said, that's right. He just said in a few days. He didn't say a specific date. Zhong Xiaolong said, it's like this. Father, I want to go to 8 Mile Groove with Liu Qian and have a good talk with Liu Qian's father. When Zhong Cai heard this, he was stunned. He frowned and said, is this your idea or Liu Qian's idea? Zhong Xiaolong said, it's my idea. I also discussed it with Liu Qian just now. She also agreed. Zhong Cai's frown immediately loosened. He smiled and said, good boy, you have a way. When father was young, he didn't have such courage. Not bad, he. While laughing, Guo Sufei walked over and asked, child's father, what's so funny? Zhong Cai said, our son is promising. He knows to find a wife for himself. Guo Sufei didn't quite understand what he meant. Zhong Cai told Guo Sufei what Zhong Xiaolong said to him just now. Guo Sufei was also very happy and said, this idea is not bad. When do you and Qianqian plan to go? Zhong Xiaolong said, Mother, didn't Mr. Liu say that he will be here soon? I think we should hurry before he comes. I think we should go now. Guo Sufei looked at the sky and said, if we go now, we won't be able to come back today. Why don't we wait until after lunch? I'll go cook with Qianqian. Sigh, if I don't have Qianqian's help in the future, I won't be able to cook. Xiaolong, you have to leave Qianqian behind. Zhong Xiaolong smiled and said, okay, mother. I will definitely. Lunch was naturally finished in a hurry. Zhong Xiaolong and Liu Qian packed up and prepared to go. At this time, Zhong Xiaohu said, Big brother, it doesn't seem safe for the two of you to go out. Why don't I go with you? Moreover, Zhong Cai also said, Xiaolong, you should also bring something. It's not good to go empty-handed. Zhong Xiaolong said, I know, father. When we reach the village entrance, I'll go buy some. When Liu Qian heard that Zhong Xiaohu wanted to go, her eyes lit up. She said to Zhong Xiaolong, let Xiaohu go with us. It's safer for the three of us to go. Moreover, you don't have to buy anything. It's good enough to bring some of the well water at home to my father. Zhong Xiaolong slapped his forehead and said, look at me. Your father loves this water the most. I forgot. Zhong Xiaohua jumped up from the chair and said, I'll go pick some fresh ones. You guys prepare something to hold the water. When Xiaohua returned with the well water, Zhong Xiaolong borrowed a sealed bottle from a neighbor and filled it to the brim with well water. This bottle of water was naturally taken by Zhong Xiaohu. Thus, the three of them went on their way. There were two roads from the Guozhuang house to Ba Li Go. One was along the river, through a bamboo forest, and then climbing a few hills, passing by the side of a few villages. The other was on a small bridge. There was a large road in the direction of Benlu town. After walking to a village, it was still a large road that led to Ba Li Go. The small road was rugged and not easy to walk on, but it was short. Although the large road was easy to walk on, it was 2 to 3 times the distance of the small road. Zhong Xiaolong and the others naturally chose the small road. Now that it was spring, the river water had long been frozen. The gurgling stream flowed slowly, and the sound was indescribably pleasant to the ears. The birds were also active, chirping. Along with the sound of the water, it made their footsteps particularly relaxed. Zhong Xiaolong and Liu Qian walked in front hand in hand. It seemed that they no longer had the scruples of being at home. They wantonly enjoyed the feeling of each other's hands. They looked around and admired the spring scenery while talking non-stop. Zhong Xiaohu, who was some distance away from them, fell behind. He held the bottle of water in his hand and smiled as he looked at his elder brother and future sister-in-law. In his heart, other than envy, there was also a trace of expectation. He was looking forward to a beautiful encounter in Ba Li Go. Zhong Xiaolong's heart was smeared with honey. He hoped that this long journey would never end, so that he could enjoy the happiness of this afternoon forever. He had never felt that walking was such a happy thing, nor had he felt that the mountain scenery that he had been tired of looking at on weekdays was so beautiful. He had never thought that Liu Qian's words were better than the sound of the river and the birds. He had never thought that Ba Li Go was so close to him from the Guozhuang house. It seemed that they had arrived at the place as soon as they started walking. When Liu Qian pulled back her hand, he was still dizzy and asked why. It was not until Liu Qian shyly said that Ba Li Go, where she grew up, was in front that he realized that the journey of walking in the clouds had come to an end. Liu Qian led Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu into the village. From time to time, people who knew Liu Qian greeted Liu Qian. Some girls and aunties even stared at Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu's faces unscrupulously and scanned their bodies. Not only did Liu Qian's face turn red, but Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu were also at a loss. After all, they did not ask who Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu were. Naturally, Liu Qian could not explain. Although she wanted to let them think what they wanted, she did not want them to think blindly like this. However, her house was still very far from the village entrance. Presumably, not long after she reached home, the topic of Zhong Xiaolong would probably spread throughout the village. When Liu Qian brought Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu home, it was very coincidental that Mr. Liu and Butcher Liu were drinking tea and talking in the small courtyard. As soon as Liu Qian entered the door, she saw Mr. Liu sitting on a small stool under the eaves. He was holding a teapot and pouring tea into a teacup. Butcher Liu, on the other hand, was holding a wine gourd that he usually used. From time to time, he would bring it to his mouth and take a sip. When Liu Qian saw her father, the rims of her eyes seemed to turn red. She shouted, "Father Tilda," and ran over. Mr. Liu was also stunned. When he saw that Liu Qian had returned, he was naturally happy in his heart. He put down the teapot and stood up to welcome her. Although it had not been long since they last met at the Zhong family, this time, Liu Qian had returned home. The feeling was naturally different. Liu Qian threw herself into her father's embrace and hugged her father's arm like a child. Mr. Liu lovingly stroked her hair and only said, "You're back. It's good that you're back." Chapter 46. The splint on Zhong Xiaolong's arm had already been removed, but it was still secured with a belt and other things. He placed it in front of his chest, while his other hand hung naturally by his side. He stood not far behind Liu Qian, watching the touching scene of Mr. Liu and his daughter reuniting. His relationship with his father and mother was very good, but he had never experienced separation, so he naturally didn't know how it felt. Now that he saw his beloved act like this, he felt gratified for her and knew that his decision this time was probably the right one. Zhong Xiaohu stood beside Zhong Xiaolong, still holding the bottle of water in his hand, but his eyes were looking around the courtyard, as if he was looking for someone. Mr. Liu lovingly stroked his daughter's hair, and his eyes also looked over Liu Qian's head towards Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu. He smiled and nodded at them, and his hand also moved away from his daughter's head, waving slightly at them to express his apology. Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu naturally also nodded in acknowledgement, and waited at the side. When Butcher Liu saw that Liu Qian had returned and Mr. Liu had gone up to greet her, he didn't get up and continued to drink his little wine. When he finished his wine, he saw the two brothers standing at the door, so he stood up and said with a smile, "I was wondering who sent Qian back, so it's our two great heroes. Come in quickly, have a few drinks with Uncle." Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu smiled and walked towards the square table under the eaves. Liu Qian, who was being intimate with her father, heard the two words drink, and raised her head, saying to Butcher Liu, second uncle, Xiaolong's injuries haven't completely healed, so he can't drink for the time being. If you want to drink, look for Xiaohu. Butcher Liu said loudly, you little girl, now you're siding with an outsider. Liu Qian said sweetly, second uncle tilde Butcher Liu said, all right, don't call me that, I know, I don't usually see you call me second uncle. Mr. Liu, on the other hand, looked thoughtfully at the farmer boy who was walking towards him. His youthful face was full of vitality. He did not look like a yes-man like the other farmers, nor did he look as careful as Zhong Cai. His eyes seemed to be very bright. The clothes on his body were very shabby, but they were very clean. They fit him very well. His footsteps were also very steady. Each step left a footprint, which made people feel very at ease. Mr. Liu naturally knew why Liu Qian brought Zhong Xiaolong back. Although he strongly disapproved of this marriage, he did admire Zhong Xiaolong. At this time, Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu also walked in front of Mr. Liu and respectfully bowed to him. Mr. Liu didn't stand on ceremony this time. He simply gestured and said, you've come a long way. Seeing that it's getting late, it's not likely that you'll be able to return to the Guozhuang house today. Why don't you stay at my place for the night? You can go accompany my second brother first. I'll go after talking with Chanshan. After the two brothers agreed, they walked under the eaves and each picked up a stool to sit down. They chatted with Butcher Liu. Mr. Liu then said to Liu Qian, Chanshan, let's go to the study to talk. Liu Qian let go of her father's arm and said, Father, you go first. I'll go make some tea for you. Xiaolong and I specially brought this from the Guozhuang house. Do you want to drink it? Mr. Liu didn't say anything. He helplessly shook his head and smiled as he went back to the study. Liu Qian walked under the eaves and took the bottle of water from Zhong Xiaohu's side. She glanced at Zhong Xiaolong and said, you two go chat with second uncle first. I'll go boil some water in the kitchen. I'll also make some side dishes and snacks while I'm at it. After walking for the whole afternoon, you must be hungry. Liu Qian went to the kitchen and put the well water on the fire to boil. When the water was ready, she looked around the empty kitchen and picked up some ready-made items to make two simple dishes. She couldn't make any snacks and only had a few leftover biscuits. She took them out along with the side dishes to satisfy the two brothers' hunger. Butcher Liu happily ate the side dishes and drank a little wine. He even poured a cup for Zhong Xiaohu from time to time. He really didn't drag Zhong Xiaolong to drink. Not long after, the water boiled. Liu Qian carefully brewed the tea and carried the tea set and water to the study. Before entering the study, she turned around to look at Zhong Xiaolong. The two of them looked at each other and Liu Qian nodded. Her eyes were full of certainty before she turned around and walked into the study. In the study, Mr. Liu was absent-mindedly reading a light book. When he saw Liu Qian walk in, he put the book down and sniffled, saying, the water in the Guozhuang house is really different from the rest. The tea is so fragrant. It's rare. Liu Qian placed the teacup in front of her father. She watched as her father sniffed the tea fragrance and tasted the tea sip by sip. He then closed his eyes to savor the taste and didn't open his mouth to speak. After Mr. Liu drank for a while, she said, Father, how's the tea? Mr. Liu said, Ari, this tea is naturally much better than what I usually drink. However, it's still not as mellow as the one I drank at the Guozhuang house last time. It's probably because it's been stored for too long. It's not as good as fresh water. After that, Liu Qian didn't ask any more questions. Mr. Liu only focused on tasting the tea and didn't open his mouth to speak. The two of them sat across from each other for a while. Mr. Liu thought for a while and smiled, opening his mouth first. Chen, this time you came back in a hurry. Is there something you want to tell your father? Liu Qian blushed and said, Father, you're asking the obvious. If I didn't come back, wouldn't you be coming to pick me up in a few days? Mr. Liu sighed and placed the teacup on the table, saying, Chen, ever since you were young, your father has always let you have your way. I haven't interfered much with you. This time, your father didn't listen to you. You should know your father's painstaking efforts. Liu Qian thought for a while and said, I'm guessing that father's intention is that you're afraid that I'll suffer in the Zhong family and have to do farm work every day. You're also afraid that Zhong Xiaolong is a rough village man. You're afraid that my life won't be as good as it was at home? Mr. Liu nodded and said, this life isn't a problem of one person. It's the life of two people. If one person likes to study and the other wants to do farm work, then the direction of life will diverge. Naturally, life will be boring and won't last long. Moreover, the Zhong family is very poor. You should know in the time you've been there that it won't be as comfortable as living in 8 Mile Valley. Liu Qian also nodded and said, Father, you're right. I've considered all of this. I've even told Zhong Xiaolong's mother. She said something similar to what you said. She also hoped that I would consider it carefully. Mr. Liu asked curiously, she really said that? Liu Qian said, of course. I didn't think that auntie, a village woman who doesn't know many words, would be so reasonable. Mr. Liu sighed and said, that's really rare. No wonder she could raise such a magnanimous child. Following that, Mr. Liu said, actually, you can't understand all of this. It's just that we've experienced it before. With your personality, even if we say it, it might not be useful. Only when you hit a wall will you understand father's painstaking efforts. However, although your mother's matter happened a long time ago, it's still vivid in my mind. If I had the ability, I wouldn't have let your mother suffer and leave us early. Therefore, I don't want your mother's tragedy to happen to you again. Liu Qian naturally had a card up her sleeve and said, Father, perhaps you're too stubborn on this point. If you had the ability, would you still be the current you? Can Yang Qin be happy with you? If she wasn't happy, then what's the value of living for a lifetime? But mother respects you, loves you, and has only been with you for a short 10 years. However, the happiness that she has is something that others can't get in their lifetime. Tell me, which is her choice? Liu Qian continued, Father, actually, I've always thought that life's fate has already been arranged. Whether you're sad or happy, it's all a kind of life. A person's life is a kind of trajectory. When all sorts of trajectories are intertwined together, it's the whole life. Mother's trajectory is destined to involve you, and your trajectory is also destined to lead you and mother's happiness. You've always blamed mother's death on your ability, saying that you couldn't take good care of her. In fact, that's not the case. From the moment mother met you, our family's life had already been created. Mother's happiness and ending was already predetermined. Any change would be futile. If father was obsessed with politics back then, you would naturally have neglected mother. Mother wouldn't have left us early, but would she have lived happily? Seeing Mr. Liu fall into deep thought, Liu Qian continued, Actually, I've always been thinking about my meeting with Zhong Xiaolong. I've told you before that from the moment I met Zhong Xiaolong in the textile shop, our trajectories have been intertwined. I'm sure father knows about the things that happened during that time. There's no need for me to go into detail. I can only use the word fate to describe my relationship with Zhong Xiaolong. Also, there's a very important thing that father doesn't know about. Mr. Liu was stunned and said, What is it? Liu Qian said mysteriously, Father, do you think that the water in this Guozhuang house is especially delicious? Mr. Liu said, Yes, so what? Then, Liu Qian told Mr. Liu about her grandmother's illness and how she went to Lu Town to see a doctor. Mr. Liu was clearly shocked and asked, Are you sure that this is the effect of the well water? Liu Qian said, Of course. Just look at Zhong Xiaolong's arm and you'll know. Have you ever seen a broken arm heal so quickly in a short month? Also, the last time you came to see me, she said that my skin is much better than before. I can feel it myself now. Mr. Liu frowned and didn't ask any more questions. Liu Qian then continued, Father, think about it. This well water is a priceless treasure. Your body has always been very weak. Ever since mother passed away, you haven't been well. To be able to make you healthy has always been my wish. Now that we have this well water, living a long life is no longer an extravagant hope. This well water was dug out by the Zhong family and belongs to the Zhong family. Don't you think that this is a chance given to me and Xiaolong by the heavens? Also, Big Brother hasn't gotten married yet. I don't know if my future sister-in-law will be virtuous. If I move to the Zhong family and you move to the Guozhuang house, on one hand, I can serve father, and on the other, father can enjoy the blessings of the heavens. Wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? Would it solve all the problems in my heart? Chapter 47. Mr. Liu then said, Chen, whether or not father drinks this well water, whether or not his health is good, whether or not he can live a long life are all small problems. You being able to live a peaceful and happy life is what father wants to see the most. Liu Chen said, Father, then if I can live a peaceful life and at the same time take care of you and ensure your health, then why wouldn't I do that? Moreover, marriage is a gamble. You may be able to see a person's nature with a single glance, or you may never be able to see it. You can only judge whether someone is good or bad based on their appearance. If you gamble correctly, then happiness is yours. Those so-called matching families are just people's interpretation of those successful marriages in the past. How many unhappy lives in this world are the result of matching families? Liang Shanbo and Zhu Yingtai's beauty is only a legend. Perhaps when it comes to real life, they may not be as loving as father and mother. Although Zhong Xiaolong does not have Liang Shanbo's style and elegance, he surpasses Liang Shanbo in his steadiness and kindness. Those scholars in the past, I can only see their surface and it is difficult to go deeper. As for Xiaolong, I can see his nature with a single glance. I am willing to continue my fate with him. Mr. Liu was stunned hearing this and said, Chen, teaching you to read and read since you were young, I don't know if it is correct. You have read so many books that I have no words to refute you. Liu Chen smiled and said, Father, I am just feeling a little. Compared to your knowledge, I am still far from it. Mr. Liu smiled and did not speak anymore. However, Liu Chen continued, Actually, there is one thing that moves my heart in the Zhong family. It is their family's harmony and the tolerance of the elders. Marriage is not only a world for two people, but it is also a process of integration with Xiaolong's family. During the time I was in the Zhong family, I received a lot of care from the two elders, including Xiaolong's grandmother. I feel that they are very reasonable and will always think of others first. Only this kind of family can let the younger generation obtain happiness and truly live a good life. I think that I can also have the same freedom and happiness in the Zhong family as in 8 Mile Valley. Sometimes I can even feel that I may be more comfortable than in 8 Mile Valley. At this point, Mr. Liu laughed again and scolded, You little girl, you haven't even left yet and you're already talking bad about Barley Valley. No wonder people say that girls side with outsiders. Liu Chen sweetly said, Father, that's not what I meant. I'm just saying that I can get things that I can't get in 8 Mile Valley. Maybe it's because there's no mother at home. Mr. Liu was dejected and said, That's right, Chen. It's been hard on you. You didn't have a mother to dote on you since you were young. Your second aunt is also a big uncouth woman. She doesn't even care about Yeye, let alone you. This is also father's mistake. Liu Chen comforted Mr. Liu and said, Father, don't be sad. I've already grown up. Perhaps in the future, there will be someone who will dote on me. You always say that second aunt is uncouth, but Xiaolong's mother is also uncouth. However, she is especially meticulous and has a gentle personality. The difference between people is so huge. Of course, I'm not saying that second aunt is not good. Isn't second uncle's family managed by second aunt? Maybe it's because I hit it off with Xiaolong's mother. Right now, I feel like a mother. Mr. Liu nodded and said, You've always been competitive. It's rare for someone to be so subdued by you. It seems like this is also one of the reasons why you chose Zhong Xiaolong. Liu Chen blushed and nodded. Mr. Liu let out a long sigh and said, This Zhong Xiaolong was able to meet you and save you. This can be considered a heavenly opportunity. This Zhong family was able to dig out immortal water from the well. This can be considered a geographical advantage. The Zhong family and you hit it off very well. This can be considered a harmonious relationship. Liu Chen happily said, Then, Father, does this mean that you agree? Mr. Liu smiled and said, You've already stayed in the Zhong family for more than a month. Those who know say that you're benevolent and righteous. For those who don't know, they don't know what to say. For you to have such an ending is also very good. It's the best of both worlds. Moreover, with your personality, if I don't agree, will you imitate Kui Yingying? Liu Qian charmingly smiled and said, Father isn't that bigoted old Madam Kui. Mr. Liu said, don't be so talkative. When I saw that you came back, I knew that you were fully prepared to persuade your father. Otherwise, you would have already hidden in the Zhong family and refused to see me. Liu Qian said, how could I, father? Didn't your daughter take the initiative to come back? The father and daughter chatted for a while. Mr. Liu said, it's already late. Quickly go and arrange dinner. Let your second aunt and you come over to help. Today, we'll have a reunion. Oh right, you should also quickly go and tell Xiao Long. I'm sure he's feeling uneasy right now. When Liu Qian heard this, she happily said, then father, come with me. You guys can also chat and get to know each other better. Soon after, Liu Qian helped her father out of the study. The sky outside was already dark. An oil lamp had already been prepared under the eaves. Butcher Liu and the other two were still sitting and talking. There was a person sitting with his back facing them. It was Liu Qian's eldest brother, Liu Kai. Zhong Xiaolong's eyes had already swept across the study door countless times. He didn't hear what Butcher Liu and the others said. He was only worried about himself and Liu Qian. At this moment, when Liu Qian and Mr. Liu came out, he was naturally the first to see them. He subconsciously stood up. When Liu Qian saw Zhong Xiaolong stand up, she gave him a sweet smile and nodded slightly. Zhong Xiaolong knew that it was a success and he couldn't help but be overjoyed. At this time, Liu Kai also noticed the movement behind him. He quickly turned around and saw his sister whom he hadn't seen for a long time. He was naturally happy. He got up and ran over. When he was in front of her, he carefully sized her up. He couldn't help but ask Liu Qian, Qian, I haven't seen you in so long. Why do I feel that you're completely different from before? Not only have you become fairer, your eyes have also become much clearer. Your temperament has also become much more elegant. How is this caring for other people's injuries? When Liu Qian heard this, she happily looked at Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu also understood and nodded. Liu Qian said, how is that possible? Big brother, it's just that I haven't seen you in a long time. After a few days, you'll find that your sister is no different from before. Liu Kai suddenly understood and said, that makes sense. A scholar who has been away for 3 days will have a whole new level of respect. Perhaps this is the reason. Liu Qian skipped this topic and said, Big brother, how are we going to eat tonight? Liu Kai jumped up and said, I was talking to second uncle and Zhong Xiaohu just now and forgot about this matter. I'll go to second aunt's house to inform them. Liu Qian stopped him and said, Father wants us to eat at our house. It can be considered a reunion. I'll go to the village entrance to buy some things. You go to second aunt's house and see what they're cooking. Bring it together and ask them to come over and help. Liu Kai agreed and hurried off. Liu Qian wanted to go out to buy things and Zhong Xiaolong naturally wanted to go with her. However, he was stopped by Mr. Liu. He said, Xiaolong, don't go yet. Come with me to the study room. In the end, Zhong Xiaohu followed Liu Qian to the village entrance, leaving Butcher Liu to drink alone. This guy looked at the busy people and happily drank his wine. He felt that life was really colorful. Zhong Xiaolong was a bit nervous as he followed Mr. Liu into the study room. Liu Qian's eyes just now had already told him that she was satisfied with the result. This future father-in-law seemed to want to show off his power and give him some things. Although he was mentally prepared, he still felt that there was a small person in his heart that kept on pumping water. Mr. Liu entered the study room and had Zhong Xiaolong sit down. However, he did not sit down. He frowned and paced around the study room. After walking around 2 or 3 times, Mr. Liu opened his mouth and said, Xiaolong, you probably know my attitude. Zhong Xiaolong carefully said, yes. Mr. Liu continued, then, I won't say much. Actually, I called you over because I want to say something. Zhong Xiaolong respectfully said, please say it. This little nephew has already engraved it in his heart. Mr. Liu seemed to be very satisfied with Zhong Xiaolong's attitude. He smiled and said, Chen Chen grew up in Barley Gully. Although our family can't be said to be rich, Chen Chen has not suffered much since she was young. She knows very little about farm work. This is different from your family's living environment. In the future, you have to be more tolerant in this area. Zhong Xiaolong followed up and said, You don't have to worry about this. Our family's farmland is small to begin with. Xiaohua's plot of land is also on a hillside. There isn't much farm work. I can't guarantee that I won't let Chen Chen work in the fields. However, I will definitely do the most heavy work. Chen Chen can just do the side work. Mr. Liu said, You're telling the truth. You didn't say anything about not letting Chen Chen work. Actually, Chen Chen isn't a child who can't endure hardships. It's just that she wasn't allowed to work in the fields in the past. In the future, when you two live together, you just have to take good care of her. I don't expect you to give her a good life. I just want you two to be harmonious and sweet. Also, you haven't read too many books. In terms of knowledge and experience, there is a large gap between you and Chen Chen. This is your weakness. In the future, it will definitely have an impact on your life. I don't expect you to become a scholar or take third place. I only hope that you can recognize some words and read some good books. When you're together with Chen Chen, you can have common topics to talk about and communicate well. In addition, although acting courageously for a just cause isn't bad, in the future, you won't be alone. Your shoulders bear the safety of your entire family. Whenever you encounter injustice, you must first consider in your heart whether or not it's within your ability to deal with it. Otherwise, if you have regrets, it will be the sorrow of your entire family. Afterwards, Mr. Liu chattered on endlessly. Zhong Xiaolong could only nod his head in agreement. Although he didn't agree with some of the points, he also knew that this future father-in-law was doing it for his own good. He couldn't refute. Just like this, one spoke and one listened. The sky gradually darkened. It felt like he couldn't see anything. Just as Mr. Liu was about to light the lamp, someone knocked on the door of the study. Chapter 48. When Mr. Liu opened the door, it was Liu Chen. Dinner was already prepared outside. Although tonight's dinner was rushed, it was still sumptuous. Most of the dishes were already prepared by Liu Ye's family. Some of the dishes and desserts made by Liu Chen were also the icing on the cake. It made everyone who had not eaten her cooking for a long time very hungry. During the dinner, the guests and the host were very happy and chatted a lot. Butcher Liu and his family knew Mr. Liu's intention and were also very happy for Liu Chen. They also said a lot of words of blessings. It was just that they were not officially engaged with the Zhong family, so they were still very reserved when they spoke. Everyone was very happy. Only Zhong Xiaohu glanced at Liu Ye from the corner of his eyes from time to time. Unfortunately, Liu Ye's attention was not on him, making him inevitably disappointed. After dinner, they chatted for a while. Liu Chen, who had walked for the whole afternoon, was already yawning. Therefore, Liu Kai arranged for Zhong Xiaolong and his brother to rest for the night. Butcher Liu and his family also went home to rest. Early the next morning, Zhong Xiaolong and his brother were going to bid farewell and return to the Guozhuang house. Liu Chen considered that she had not been home for a long time and wanted to stay for a few more days. Moreover, Zhong Xiaolong was going back this time to discuss the engagement with his parents. She was too shy to follow, so she did not go back with him. Mr. Liu specially instructed Zhong Xiaolong to go back and explain his feelings to Zhong Cai. He did not want him to have a knot in his heart because of his previous rejection. He also asked Zhong Xiaolong to pick an auspicious day to settle the engagement. Zhong Xiaolong naturally agreed. Therefore, under Liu Chen's reluctant gaze, the two of them went on their way. The journey here was filled with sweetness, and the journey back was filled with joy. Returning to the Guozhuang house, from afar, one could see the Zhong family standing in the small courtyard through the low walls of the Zhong family. They looked at the entrance of the village from time to time. It was estimated that except for Zhong Xiaohua, The others did not have a good rest last night. Seeing Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu appear in the field of vision, Zhong Xiaohua was the first to jump up and quickly ran out. She ran to Zhong Xiaolong and asked cheerfully, "Big brother, how's the situation? Where's the good news that we were all looking forward to? Why didn't Sister Qianqian come back? Is it?" Zhong Xiaohua didn't dare to continue asking. Before Zhong Xiaolong could open his mouth, Zhong Xiaohu snappily said, "Can't you see that Big Brother's face is like a peach blossom? He's so happy that he can't close his mouth. You should take the bottle in my hand first. I've been carrying it all the way." Zhong Xiaohua was happy. She didn't take the bottle in Zhong Xiaohu's hand. Instead, she turned and ran home to report to her parents. After receiving the good news, Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei were also very happy. They ran to the entrance of the courtyard to welcome their son. Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohu were like heroes as they were escorted into the small courtyard of the Zhong family. After Zhong Xiaolong sat down on the chair, he took the water that Zhong Xiaohua handed over and drank a few mouthfuls. Then, he began to talk about the situation in 8 Mile Valley. Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei listened with joy. They were secretly relieved. When Zhong Xiaolong proudly said that Mr. Liu had apologized and asked the Zhong family to pick an auspicious day for the engagement, the two of them listened with mixed feelings. They were happy that they didn't misjudge Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu was still a good friend that they could have a deep relationship with. Of course, they would be in-laws in the future. He was a good in-law that they could rest assured. They were worried that there should be betrothal gifts for the engagement. With their family's situation, this was a problem. If they gave too little, their face didn't matter, but Mr. Liu's family's face would be affected. If they gave too much, they really couldn't afford it. It would add more difficulties to Zhong Xiaolong and Liu Qian's future life. However, these were all to be considered in the future. The key now was that they could celebrate a little. They had to set a date first. Guo Sufei also happily told this good news to her bedridden grandmother. Her grandmother was so happy that her face became ruddy. In the next few days, the Zhong family was immersed in joy. When spring returned to the earth, Zhong Xiaolong's spring had also arrived. Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei were busy with the engagement. Zhong Xiaolong and his brothers were busy with the spring plowing and planting in the fields. The weather was getting warmer day by day. The soil in the fields had already been frozen. The warm spring breeze blew on their faces, reminding them that spring plowing was never too early. The custom of the engagement was also very simple. The father and mother of the man would bring various gifts and prepare the man's birth characters. They would go to the woman's house. The woman would accept the gifts and give the woman's birth characters to the man. Then, the engagement would be completed. Of course, the time of the marriage would be set at that time. Most of the time, they would come again to discuss the marriage in the future and set the time again. In fact, the betrothal gifts were just some gifts of various colors. However, people originally had a competitive mentality. The gifts were compared with each other. At this time, many people directly gave silver, sometimes it was also called iridescent gold. As a matter of fact, Zhong Cai and his wife were worried about iridescent gold. Zhong Cai thought that Liu Qian was a good daughter-in-law. He should give her more iridescent gold to show that the Zhong family had a precious daughter-in-law. Moreover, Mr. Liu would also have a lot of face. Guo Sufei thought that there should be something to show, but her family's conditions were limited. It couldn't be too precious. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to live before they married her. Zhong Cai actually knew about this situation. He also thought so before, but when it came to the matter, he hesitated. After all, there were still a few hundred taels of silver banknotes hidden at home. With this possibility, of course, he wanted to do things better in his heart. When Zhong Cai talked about the banknotes, Guo Sufei also hesitated. When she talked to Liu Qian before, she also decided to use the banknotes, but she was stopped by Liu Qian. At this time, since there were banknotes, why not use it? Moreover, more than a month had passed, and no one had come to make trouble at home. Presumably, the other party really took this money as compensation. In this way, this money was her family's. Why not use it? The disagreement between the husband and wife seemed to disappear. They were both inclined to use this banknote. Therefore, Guo Sufei took out the banknotes and the token hidden at the bottom of the box. Then, she called Zhong Xiaolong into the inner room. Zhong Xiaolong's injury healed rapidly. In these few days, he didn't need to fix his arm anymore. It was just that his injured arm couldn't carry heavy objects. Zhong Xiaolong entered the inner room and asked, "Father, Mother, what's the matter?" "I'm preparing to go down to loosen the soil." Guo Sufei said lovingly, "Your arm hasn't recovered yet. It's better to do less work. Let Xiaohu and Xiaohua do more work." Zhong Xiaolong said with a smile, "I've been in bed for a long time this month. My bones feel like they're going to rust. It's really comfortable to move around now. Moreover, Xiaohua is still young and growing. How can I let her do more work?" Zhong Cai said, "I know that you're full of vigor now. We don't intend to stop you, but the future is long. You have to pay more attention to your body." Zhong Xiaolong replied, "I know. Father, what's the matter? It can't be as simple as letting me rest." Guo Sufei said, "Oh, it's like this. Your father and I are preparing to go to Ba Li Go in these few days to settle the marriage between you and Chen Chen. However, our family can't come up with a good betrothal gift. We plan to take out the banknotes from last time to exchange for some." After he finished speaking, he placed the 2 banknotes and the token in front of Zhong Xiaolong. He pointed at the token and said, "Take this thing with you. If something happens during the exchange, take this thing out. It might be useful." Zhong Xiaolong looked at his father and mother's eager faces and the banknotes and tokens in front of him. He sighed and didn't pick them up. He said, "Father, Mother, didn't we say that we won't use these banknotes again?" Zhong Cai smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, that's what we said at the time. However, the situation is stronger than the person. If we don't come up with a good betrothal gift, won't Liu Qian's family lose face?" Zhong Xiaolong said, "Father, if we're talking about good or bad family background, there are many people in this area that are better than us. The number of people who went to the Liu family to propose marriage is even greater. How can we compare? Liu Qian was willing to marry into our family not because of our family background. The day before yesterday at the Liu family, Mr. Liu told me a lot. He is very clear about our family's situation and didn't mention anything about betrothal gifts. I think we don't have to puff ourselves up at our own cost." Guo Sufei said, "Xiaolong, they didn't mention it, but that doesn't mean they don't care. It's not strange to have too many gifts. We should be prepared." Zhong Xiaolong said, "No, Mother. I can't ruin the family just because I want to marry a wife. These banknotes are a disaster. We must not use them." Guo Sufei said, "Your father and I have also discussed this. They haven't come to our door for so long. It should be fine. Moreover, we have this token. They may not dare to do anything to us." Zhong Xiaolong smiled bitterly and said, "Mother, this token was given to us by Heroine Shu to protect our lives. It only says that if there are bullies who come to find trouble, we can use it to prove that she is here to protect us. Moreover, didn't Hero Wen also say that? Don't touch these banknotes. When the bullies come to our door, we must quickly return them. If they come to our door in the future and we don't have any banknotes to give them, what will we do?" Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei were speechless. In fact, it's not that they don't know these things. They are confused because they are concerned. When it comes to matters concerning their son, it's inevitable that they will be confused. Zhong Xiaolong said again, "The Liu family doesn't admire us for things like money. Moreover, don't we have something more precious than money in our family? If there is a chance in the future, we can just give it to Mr. Liu." Zhong Cai smiled bitterly and said, "What is better than money in our family? How come I don't know?" Zhong Xiaolong smiled mysteriously and said the following words. Chapter 49. Zhong Xiaolong smiled and said, "It's our well water. When I saw Mr. Liu drinking tea that day, he was happier than if we gave him 10 taels of silver. In the future, we can give him more well water. Not only can it satisfy his appetite, but it can also ensure his health. Isn't that better?" "Oh right, Father, when you go this time, if you have the chance, tell Mr. Liu to move to the Guozhuang house. I saw that he had this intention last time, but he still had some misgivings. This time, Liu Qian came, so I think he would be willing to come. This way, Liu Qian and I can also take care of him. What do you think? Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei looked at each other and said, when I go, I will definitely say these words. How about this, you keep these banknotes and tokens first. If you really need them, you can exchange them. Zhong Xiaolong thought about it and said, okay, then I'll keep them first. After he finished speaking, he put the banknotes and tokens into his pocket. Since Zhong Xiaolong didn't agree to use banknotes, the Zhong family's betrothal gifts were much simpler. They just prepared a few simple gifts according to the local customs. Early in the morning, Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei put on new clothes and took the prepared gifts. They set off to Ba Li Go to prepare for the most important engagement in Zhong Xiaolong's life. When Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei arrived at Mr. Liu's house, they received a very grand welcome. When they presented the simple betrothal gifts, Mr. Liu didn't care and respectfully accepted them. He didn't look down on them or turn hostile because of the simplicity of the gifts. This made Zhong Cai and his wife feel relieved. There was no one else in the Liu family's hall, only Butcher Liu and other family members. It seemed that Mr. Liu really wasn't the kind of person who liked to be extravagant and formal. There was no sign of Liu Qian in the hall. The whole process of the engagement was simple. Everything was carried out according to the customs of the countryside. Nothing was overdone. When the ceremony came to an end smoothly, it was time for the two parties to discuss the wedding. Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei asked Mr. Liu to make the decision. They only had one request, which was to get married as soon as possible. Because their grandmother's health couldn't wait too long, her last wish was to see her grandson's wedding. Mr. Liu pondered for a long time. He took out the almanac and carefully examined it. His brows were slightly furrowed. Zhong Cai and the others couldn't help but feel anxious. After a while, Mr. Liu raised his head and said, "Look at this date. Recently, the end of this month has been an auspicious day. After that, it will be June. Isn't the end of this month too rushed?" At the end of June, the old lady. Mr. Liu did not finish his sentence. As expected, Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei also frowned. Guo Sufei did not give up and asked, "Are there no good days in between?" Mr. Liu said, "There are many good days in between, but there aren't any that match Xiao Long and Qian Qian's birth characters." Zhong Cai let out a long breath and said, "Ari, then, there's only June. There are only a few days until the end of the month. There's no sign of the house for the wedding. It's just a few days, how can we prepare it?" Mr. Liu also nodded and said, "That's the only thing we can do. But what about the old lady?" At this time, a voice came from outside, "Father, I think it's better to set it at the end of this month." Everyone looked and saw that the person who came in was Liu Qian. It turned out that she had been listening outside the entire time. Liu Qian's face was a bit red as she said, "Uncle, Auntie, seeing Xiaolong's wedding is grandmother's last wish. As the younger generation, we should satisfy her. Actually, the simplicity of the wedding is also up to us. There's no need for overly complicated ceremonies. It's also not realistic for us to hold a grand wedding. I think you don't need to buy a new house for the time being. Let's just find a place first. Moreover, Father, aren't you also planning to move to the Guozhuang house? Take this opportunity and find a place next to the Zhong family's courtyard. Build a few houses and surround it with a courtyard wall. Wouldn't that be a home? When this courtyard is ready, you can move there. Xiao Long and I will also move there. We can take care of you on one hand, and we can also take care of Uncle and the others on the other. What do you think?" Liu Qian's idea seemed very unimaginable, but after careful consideration, it was still very feasible. Grandmother's health should not last until June. When the old lady passed away, this morning ceremony was likely to delay the wedding. The old lady was eager to see her grandson's wedding, so this wedding should be held at the end of February. With the Zhong family's family background, it was not realistic to hold a large-scale wedding. It was also very easy to prepare a simple wedding. It was not a big problem to ask for help from familiar people in the village for a few days. The most difficult problem was the new house. It was supposed to be a new house for the newly married couple. If they started preparing now, it was estimated that it could be done in a month. If Mr. Liu also wanted to move over, then he had to build a small courtyard again. This would take a few months. Liu Qian also wanted to take care of her father. Of course, this courtyard had to be built, so it was better to put it together. However, what Zhong Cai was thinking now was that Liu Qian wanted to separate from Xiaolong before she married into the family. She wanted to live with her father. It seemed that she wanted to separate from the family. Could it be that she had other thoughts? However, after that, Zhong Cai denied this idea. What did his family have that Liu Qian coveted? It was nothing more than that. Liu Qian persuaded her father to go there because she wanted to consider her father's health. This was filial piety. Xiaolong and Liu Qian would live alone. To be honest, it was a matter of time. There were 3 sons in the family. How could they not separate from the family? It seemed too early to mention it at this time, but after thinking about it carefully, it was still appropriate. At least, it would let others see Liu Qian's vision. It would not let Zhong Xiaohu and Zhong Xiaohua have a knot in their hearts. Mr. Liu naturally had no opinion in his heart. He was originally thinking about how to retire. He was a teacher and was respected everywhere. He heard that there was no teacher in the Guozhuang house. He would definitely be popular if he went there. Moreover, there was a daughter to rely on there. He could also protect his daughter. Why not? He was still thinking about how to bring up the matter of moving to Zhong Cai. His daughter brought it up at this time. It was really timely. There were people who objected. That was Butcher Liu's family. Butcher Liu raised his voice and said, "Big brother, why do you want to go to the Guozhuang house? You didn't even discuss it with me. The 2 of us grew up in Barley Valley." Mr. Liu said gently, "Second brother, I'm also thinking about it. Qianqian is going to marry into the Guozhuang house far away. She is unfamiliar with the place and there is no one to take care of her. Liu Kai and I are at home alone. There is no woman to take care of us." Liu Yeye interrupted and said, "Uncle, don't you still have me? Haven't I been helping at home all this time?" Mr. Liu said with a smile, "Yeye, I know that you are working hard at Uncle's house. But after all, it is not a long-term solution. Look at your sister's engagement. She is about to get married. Are you still far away? Even if you find a husband in Barley Valley, you can't come over every day to look after the house for Uncle. Moreover, Liu Kai also needs to find a wife to live with. This house should be given to him quickly. If I don't force him, who knows when he will find a wife?" Liu Kai said with a red face, "Father, look at what you are saying. I haven't found a suitable one yet." Mr. Liu glanced at him and said, "Then you should look for a good one for me. Strive to settle the matter with your sister this year. We will have a double happiness." Liu Kai did not say anything. Then, Mr. Liu said to Butcher Liu, "Second brother, although this Gua Manor is far, it's actually only half a day's journey. Even if I move there, it'll still be very convenient for me to move around in the future. Moreover, that business of yours as a butcher has nothing to do with my teaching. You and I have a brotherly relationship, so we can just move around every 10 days to half a month. We definitely won't drift apart because of time. In the future, when you are tired of staying in Barley Valley, you can also move in with me." Mr. Liu knew that Butcher Liu was outspoken and could not keep secrets in his heart. Therefore, he did not mention a word about the well water. Of course, if the water was really effective in the future, Mr. Liu would definitely bring Butcher Liu and the others over. Mr. Liu saw that no one had any objections, so he set the date with Zhong Cai. It was the day at the end of February. Then, he discussed the details with Zhong Cai. Liu Qian did not listen in and left. Liu Yeye also followed her out. When they arrived at Liu Qian's boudoir, Liu Yeye teased, "Elder sister, do you think that Xiaolong is in such a hurry to marry over?" Liu Qian said, "It is not what you think. This Zhong family's grandmother does not have many days left. The last time I was at his house, she was already coughing up blood. The old woman has worked hard all her life. I think we should still fulfill her last wish. Moreover, you also know his family's situation. Doing things in such a hurry is actually a kind of relief. It does not give me and Xiaolong too much of a burden. My decision is beneficial to both him and me. Liu Yeye said, the last time you told me, I also thought about it for a long time. This fate is really strange. You have known each other for less than 2 months and you are going to eat at the same stove. Now that I think about it, it is really magical. Liu Qian smiled and said, you can do it too. I saw that these few times when Zhong Xiaohu saw you, his eyes could not leave you. I think he also wants to eat at the same stove as you. Liu Yeye blushed and said, elder sister, don't tease me. Last time at the Zhong family, I also told you that I don't have any feelings for this Zhong Xiaohu. Although he did save me, I am only grateful. In your words, there is no fate between us. Moreover, a few days ago, Mr. Zhao from Shuezhuang sent someone over to propose marriage to his second son, Zhao Yuzhao. I have seen Zhao Yuzhao before, he is also a scholar with a decent appearance. It is only because he has been busy with your matters that father has not agreed for the time being. Once your matters are settled, I estimate that the marriage will be set. When Liu Qian heard this, she was very happy and said, you little girl, you are still hiding this secret in your heart. You only told me today. I have seen this Zhao Yuzhao before. His appearance and knowledge are really good. He is very suitable for you. Yeye, your luck is not bad. Chapter 50. Liu Yeye giggled and said, no matter how good your luck is, it can't be compared to your fate. That was given by the heavens. You just wait to slowly enjoy your happiness. I just want to persist in my dream. I want him to read me poems that I like and write my own poems. When I'm free, I'll look at the small bridge and the flowing water. When night comes, I'll give him incense. Liu Qian said, Yeye, in fact, love is sweet. Life is realistic. I have the same dream as you. Unfortunately, the heavens have arranged Zhong Xiaolong for me. I can only choose my village wife's life. Different people have different ways of living. I hope that we will have our own happy life. Liu Yeye said, sister, I also believe that we will be happy. However, elder sister, have you really decided? I still want to ask you one last time. Have you really decided to marry an illiterate farmer in such a hurry? Decades later, when you look back, won't you regret today's decision? When Liu Qian heard this, she tugged at Liu Yeye and said, Yeye, there are some things that cannot be decided by reason. Even though there are millions of people who will continue to move forward, perhaps today's decision will lead to a different life for me. Perhaps in a few decades, I will regret today's decision. However, right now, I do not regret it. When you are afraid of the slightest thing and do not know when to advance or retreat, you have lost the right to choose. Life is the combination of many choices. Different choices are different lives. If you and I both make the same choice, then wouldn't there be no joy in life? Although Xiaolong is a farmer, he is not illiterate. He is not a rotten wood that can't be carved. I think that our lives are a process of mutual influence and change. He may not write poems for me, but I can read for him and teach him how to write. We don't have a small bridge and flowing water. Maybe we can have a man plowing and a woman weaving. Although I can't give him incense, how can the bedroom be just drawing eyebrows? I can let him grind ink for me. In short, we will gradually change and make our lives happier. Liu Yeye also smiled and said, elder sister, your homework was better than mine when you were young, and you read more books than me when you grew up. I can't win against you, but I always feel that you will suffer a lot if you marry into the Zhong family. Why do you want to make yourself uncomfortable? However, Liu Qian said, you are still a little stubborn. The word happiness is the same for everyone. The happiness of the poor is no different from the happiness of the rich. It doesn't mean that your happiness is better than others just because you are rich. So, when I choose to be poor or rich, I am choosing happiness. There was happiness in suffering, and there was happiness in enjoying. As long as one felt happy, why would one be afraid of suffering? Even if it is pain in the eyes of others, how can you know the sweetness in it? As the saying goes, if you are not a fish, How can you know the happiness of the fish? There is only so much happiness in this world. The more happiness you have, the less happiness others will have. If you feel unhappy every day, then others will have more happiness every day. Instead of sharing your happiness with others, why don't you live happily every day? Liu Yeye listened and frowned. She understood something in her heart, but she immediately let go and said, "Elder sister, I am here to persuade you, but what you said made me think differently. However, even if you are right, I do not have the slightest interest in that Zhong Xiaohu." Liu Qian said, "You little girl, I am just telling you my own thoughts. I am not prepared to be a matchmaker." Not to mention the two sisters quarreling in the room, the two prospective in-laws in the hall had already discussed the specific details. At this time, it was already late. If they rushed back to Guozhuang, they would have to travel at night. Naturally, Mr. Liu would not let them leave like this. Dinner was eaten at Mr. Liu's house. After the engagement, they were now considered a family. This meal was naturally eaten to their heart's content, and both the host and the guest were happy. Early the next morning, when the sky was still hazy, Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei said goodbye to Mr. Liu and hurried back to the Guozhuang house. There were only a few days until the end of the month. They still had to hurry back to prepare for the wedding. The task was very difficult. When the two elders rushed back to the Guozhuang house and told Zhong Xiaohu the good news, Zhong Xiaohua and Zhong Xiaohua, who were waiting at the side, were so happy that they almost jumped up. Their impression of this future sister-in-law was really good. They did not expect that they would be able to see this sister-in-law in a few days. It was really unexpected. When Grandma heard Liu Qian set the date a few days later, she kept nagging, "Good child, good daughter-in-law." If there was a memorial tablet, she would have burned a few sticks of incense to thank the ancestors for finding such a good granddaughter-in-law. Zhong Cai and Guo Sufei's family had a very good reputation in the Guozhuang house. Moreover, there had never been any big events in the family. This time, for their eldest son to marry a daughter-in-law, the villagers naturally did their best to help. Many people had also seen Liu Qian. Although the Zhong family did not admit the relationship between Liu Qian and the Zhong family before, everyone had a lot of gossip behind their backs. This time, they could marry Liu Qian legitimately, which was also something that everyone expected. However, they did not expect that the time would be so short. Some people even thought in the wrong direction. But when the people with good intentions mentioned Grandma, they immediately understood and could not help but give Liu Qian a thumbs up. When the villagers came to congratulate them, they would receive them in the big shed. The new house needed to be prepared. For the time being, they would use the house where the three brothers lived. Zhong Xiaohu was forced to squeeze together with Zhong Xiaohua on the Kang bed. The house in the small courtyard also needed to be slightly repaired. Fortunately, the firewood was good. With the help of the villagers, everything was completed within the scheduled time. On the day of the wedding, the entire small courtyard of the Zhong family was filled with a jubilant atmosphere. Before dawn, the small courtyard of the Zhong family was filled with a hubbub of voices. Many people came and busied themselves with their own things. Some of the women in the village came to help tidy up the tables and chairs, and help to clean up the vegetables. The chef also started a fire and began to prepare the meal. Zhong Xiaolong was also woken up early. After tidying up, he prepared to ride a big horse, bring the bridal sedan chair and the band to Barley Gully to marry Liu Qian. The route of the wedding was naturally not the small path that they usually took. It took longer than usual. Moreover, they had to rush back before noon. Of course, they had to set off through the stars and the moon. When everyone was ready to set off, Guo Sufei found that the best man, Zhong Xiaohua, was missing. She hurriedly asked Zhong Xiaohu. He also felt very strange. In the middle of the night, he heard someone in the courtyard and got up early to help. When he got up, he also called Zhong Xiaohua. It seemed that he did not get up. Zhong Xiaohu hurriedly went back to the room to take a look. Sure enough, Zhong Xiaohua was still sleeping soundly on the Kang. No matter how Zhong Xiaohu called, he did not wake up. In the end, Zhong Xiaohu ruthlessly poured water on him. He even turned over and went back to sleep, leaving everyone at a loss. However, the matter of the best man had been handed over to him yesterday. They could not find anyone else temporarily. Fortunately, there was a sedan chair. Moreover, grandmother also knew that Zhong Xiaohua slept until the sun came out. Everyone carried Zhong Xiaohua into the sedan chair and let him sleep. Now, her sister-in-law had not even sat in the sedan chair, but her brother slept first. In this way, the wedding procession carried Zhong Xiaohua sleeping in the sedan chair to Ba Li Go in the dark. When the procession had traveled more than half the distance, the sky was like a fish belly. When the sun peeked out from the horizon, that ray of sunlight swept over the sedan chair. Only then did Zhong Xiaohua open his eyes. Rubbing his eyes, he found that he was sleeping in an unfamiliar environment. Surprised, he lifted the curtain of the sedan chair. Only then did he realize that he was sleeping in an unfamiliar environment. He stopped the sedan chair and Zhong Xiaohua came down from the sedan chair. He ran in front of Zhong Xiaolong's horse and hurriedly apologized to his elder brother. Zhong Xiaolong pulled him to ride on the horse and hugged him, saying, "Xiaohua, it's okay. You were sleeping to grow. You didn't delay anything, so why are you apologizing? However, this time I really opened my eyes. How come I didn't know that you could sleep so much that you couldn't even wake up with water?" Zhong Xiaohua blushed and said embarrassedly, "I don't know. Maybe I used to sleep like this before, but I never got up so early." Zhong Xiaolong thought about it and felt that it was true. He and his younger brother had always slept together. In the past, he didn't find anything unusual. Moreover, he never got up so early. Maybe Xiaohua had always been sleeping like this. Anyway, there was nothing wrong with him. He didn't need to get up so early in the future, so he didn't ask anymore. The rest of the journey was not far. With the two brothers chatting and Zhong Xiaolong's excited mood, they quickly finished the journey. The village entrance of Ba Li Go could be seen from afar. Only then did Zhong Xiaolong stop the horse and let the wedding procession rest for a while. Then a special master arranged for people to set off the firecrackers and let the band play music. Zhong Xiaohua also quickly and obediently jumped down from the horse. She took the horse's reins from her elder brother's hand and walked to the front. She led the horse forward slowly. The people of the Liu family were naturally waiting at the village entrance early. When they saw the wedding procession, someone hurried back to report to Mr. Liu. The wedding band also broke the silence of the early morning. The villagers of Ba Li Go were all awakened by this festive sound early in the morning. Before the wedding procession entered the village, many children and villagers stopped them and asked for candy and other things. The Zhong family was naturally prepared. Someone took out the prepared things and scattered them to the crowd. Everyone picked up the candy and dispersed in a hubbub. They let the wedding procession move forward. In the short distance from the village entrance to the Liu family, the wedding procession was stopped several times. However, everyone was very happy and didn't get angry because of this. It was the custom of the countryside. When a family had a happy occasion, everyone wanted to share the joy. The more joy they shared, the bigger the family's happy occasion. The wedding procession couldn't wait to be stopped as much as possible. Chapter 51. When the wedding procession arrived at the Liu family's gate, the sky was already bright. There were already many people waiting at the gate. Zhong Xiaohua led the horse to the front of the crowd before stopping. When Zhong Xiaolong got off the horse, Zhong Xiaohua handed the horse's reins to the Liu family members who came over. Everyone cupped their hands to Zhong Xiaolong and said, "Groom, congratulations, congratulations." Zhong Xiaolong also happily returned everyone's greeting. Then, everyone opened up a path. Zhong Xiaohua looked up and saw a wooden shelf next to the gate. On the shelf, there was a bow. This was the custom of the countryside. The first thing the groom did when he got married was to shoot 3 arrows into the sky at the bride's gate. It meant to drive away all the evil spirits. In the past, when other people were getting married, they had seen this before. However, although Zhong Xiaolong's arm injury was healed, the work in the field was still a problem. How could he draw the bow and shoot arrows? It seemed that this matter could only be done by the best man, Zhong Xiaohua. However, Zhong Xiaohua was only a 12 or 13-year-old child. Letting him draw the bow was too far-fetched. Everyone looked at each other. Zhong Xiaolong thought about it and walked forward, preparing to take the bow. Zhong Xiaohua was anxious. She quickly rushed forward and pulled her brother, saying, "Big brother, your arm just healed. How can you pull this thing? If there is any injury, wouldn't all the previous efforts be wasted? Let me do it." Zhong Xiaolong smiled and said, "It's okay. It's just drawing the bow and shooting. I still have the strength. You're still young. How can you draw the bow and shoot arrows?" Zhong Xiaohua also smiled and said, "Big brother, you're looking down on me. I can work in the field myself. How can I not have the strength? Let me try. If I can't do it, you can do it. We won't lose face, don't you think?" Zhong Xiaolong thought about it and agreed. Anyway, the best man did things for the groom during the wedding. If Xiaohua really couldn't draw the bow, then he could only do it himself. Mr. Liu probably knew that his arm wasn't good enough. The bow on the shelf should be a soft bow that didn't need too much strength to draw. Zhong Xiaohua walked to the shelf and took the big bow from the shelf that was as tall as him. He felt that it was very heavy. He had never used a bow before, so he thought that all bows were very heavy, so he didn't care. Then, he picked up an arrow without an arrowhead from the shelf and put it on the bow. He turned around and asked Zhong Xiaolong, "Big brother, where should I shoot?" Zhong Xiaolong pointed to the sky outside the village and said, "Over there." Zhong Xiaohua agreed and imitated the way he used to look at people. He got into a horse stance and then faced the sky and pulled the bowstring with all his strength. However, the bowstring was very tight. Zhong Xiaohua pulled it about 30% full and he couldn't pull it anymore. He couldn't help but blush. Normally, he should release his hand and shoot the arrow. But this was his first time shooting an arrow. Moreover, he used to see others pull the bowstring like a full moon, so he thought that it must be completely pulled. So, he took a deep breath and moved his two arms. Sure enough, he felt a force coming from his arms. He shouted and the bow was immediately pulled into a full moon shape. He confidently looked at the morning glow outside the village and released the tight bowstring. The arrow flew out like a meteor with a su sound. Looking at the arrow flying far away, Zhong Xiaohua felt a sense of joy in his heart. Zhong Xiaohua used the same method for the remaining 2 arrows and shot them far away from 8 Mile Gorge. After the 3 arrows were shot, Zhong Xiaohua felt that his arms were sore and numb. He couldn't lift the bow and couldn't put it back on the shelf. At this time, everyone was applauding and praising Zhong Xiaohua's strength. Only Zhong Xiaolong saw the abnormality. He quickly walked in front of Zhong Xiaohua and took the bow. He was about to put it back on the shelf, but unexpectedly, his hand felt heavy. He quickly exerted some strength and caught it. Zhong Xiaolong was very surprised in his heart. Why is this flexible bow so heavy? However, at this time, everyone had already surrounded him. He didn't have time to think carefully and just put the bow on the shelf. He was surrounded by people and walked into the Liu family's courtyard, leaving the bow alone on the shelf. Just as Zhong Xiaolong was being crowded into the Liu family's courtyard, Hunter Zhong at the north end of 8 Mile Gorge was packing up and preparing to go hunting in the mountains. He walked into the small house where he kept the bow and arrows. Not long after, he came out in a flustered and exasperated manner and asked his wife, "Boy's mother, where did the bow on the shelf go?" His wife asked curiously, "Which bow? How would I know? I've never entered that small house." Hunter Zhong was anxious and said, "It's the 5-pickle bow that was passed down from my ancestors. It was on the top of the shelf on the right. I saw it the day before yesterday, but it's gone today. Could it be that there was a thief at home yesterday?" His wife was preparing breakfast on the stove when she suddenly remembered something and hurriedly ran out, saying, "I remember now. Boy's father, Teacher Liu, sent someone to borrow a flexible bow yesterday. It must be for his son-in-law today. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to draw it, so he specifically asked for it. At that time, I was packing the child's clothes, so I asked someone to get it himself. I remember you said that there was one on the shelf that you made for fun, so I told him." Hunter Zhong asked, "Did you see it when he took it out?" His wife said shamefully, "He did tell me, but wasn't it just a toy that you made blindly? I was too lazy to look at it, so I let him take it away." Hunter Zhong immediately scolded, "You prodigal woman, you didn't even take a good look at what you borrowed. He took away our ancestral bow, and you were too lazy to look at it. Moreover, Teacher Liu has always been very good to us. All the children in our village were taught by him. There must be a reason why he specially came to borrow a flexible bow. Look at you now, you gave him a bow that no one has been able to draw for more than 10 years. Aren't you purposely making him lose face? I'll see how I'll deal with you when I come back." After saying that, Hunter Zhong hurriedly ran out in a panic. When he ran to the Liu family's main gate, Zhong Xiaolong and the others had already entered the courtyard. The strong bow that had been passed down from his ancestors was placed on the shelf at the entrance. In his opinion, it must have been thrown there because no one had been able to draw it. At this moment, he just happened to see someone poking his head out from the Liu family's main gate. He said thoughtfully, "Liu San tell Teacher Liu that I'm taking this bow and arrow." The person inside responded, "Okay, got it." Hunter Zhong hurriedly took the bow and hugged it to his chest like it was a treasure. He hurriedly left with a guilty look on his face, afraid that someone would stop him and scold him for using a bow that no one had been able to draw. With his mind preoccupied, he did not notice that the 3 arrows without arrowheads that should have been placed on the shelf had all disappeared. At this moment, Zhong Xiaolong, accompanied by Zhong Xiaohua, had already walked to the door of Liu Qian's boudoir. According to the village's rules, if the groom wanted the bride to open the door, he must answer the bride's question. Only when the answer was satisfactory could the groom open the door. In fact, most of the people who asked questions were the bridesmaids and the others. The bride would not make things difficult for her future husband. Zhong Xiaolong was also facing the same problem now. Mr. Liu had always treated people with poetry and literature. Most of the people in this courtyard were also scholars. There was not a single person who knew martial arts. Otherwise, Zhong Xiaohua's shocking 3 arrows would not have gone unnoticed. Although Mr. Liu had told his friends and students in advance that his son-in-law came from a peasant background and they should not make things too difficult for him, to be honest, Mr. Liu's smart and virtuous daughter had more than 1 or 2 people in mind. Today, she was actually married by someone who was not in her circle. There were a few guests who felt indignant in their hearts. However, of course, they could not be very obvious in front of Mr. Liu. There were a few nosy people who were thinking about how to make things difficult for Zhong Xiaolong on the bride's issue. Liu Yeye was of course Liu Qian's bridesmaid. This girl had always been a person who was not afraid of trouble. Moreover, she never thought before doing things. Thus, her first question was, let Zhong Xiaolong write a few words to show off his calligraphy. When this question came out, Liu Qian, who was in the boudoir, glared at Liu Yeye and asked, "Whose idea was this? Why didn't you tell me?" Liu Yeye said in a sweet voice, "Sister, it was a group of people outside who said it. It's okay to make brother-in-law lose face now. It's also good to urge him to learn calligraphy properly in the future. What do you think?" Liu Qian smiled bitterly in her heart. "What can I say? Your question has already come out. Can I take it back? Sigh, I just don't know if Xiaolong will blame me in the future." Mr. Liu's face in the hall was also a bit ugly. This was obviously making things difficult for his son-in-law. However, marriage was about liveliness. No matter how much nonsense they made, they could not be blamed. It was better to see how Zhong Xiaolong would deal with it. If he really could not do it, he would just write something. It was not a big deal. After all, it was not a big deal anyway. Zhong Xiaolong and his brothers' faces were also very strange. What they were afraid of came true. Zhong Xiaolong sighed in his heart. He walked forward and prepared to write a few words to deal with it. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua once again pulled her elder brother's arm and said, "Don't be impatient, elder brother. Let me try. Can you do it?" Zhong Xiaolong was a bit doubtful. Zhong Xiaohua patted his hand and said, "It's still the same words. If I can't do it, you try again." Zhong Xiaohua walked forward and said to everyone, "It's still the same old words. My elder brother's arm injury has not healed yet. Let me write this for him." After he finished speaking, he walked in front of the prepared ink and paper. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He raised his head and said, "Everyone, for today's liveliness, we will not use this ink and paper." Everyone asked curiously, "Then what should we use?" Zhong Xiaohua asked, "Is there a ready-made mop?" "Today, I will use the mop to write a few big words for everyone." "Mop? How do you write it?" someone asked curiously. While they were talking, someone had already brought the mop over. Zhong Xiaohua found a basin and poured the ground ink into it. She then placed the mop into the basin and dipped it in. She held the mop with both hands and carefully pondered in her heart. She picked up the mop and wrote 2 big words on the limestone slab in Mr. Liu's courtyard, "Misty." These 2 words were written in an ancient style. It was very elegant and full of charm. Zhong Xiaohua wrote it in one go, causing the surrounding people to be stunned. In the hall, Mr. Liu heard the commotion outside and suddenly came out of the hall. When he saw the 2 words on the limestone slab, he did not say anything. He carefully thought about it and was also stunned. Speaking of Misty, these 2 words were originally the words on the token. That day, after Zhong Xiaohua asked someone to recognize it, she had simulated, tasted, and practiced more than once how to write it. Other words, such as Zhong Xiaohua, he would not be able to write it no matter what. However, these 2 words had already been deeply engraved into her heart. Naturally, she could write it at her fingertips. Of course, because she did not have the ability to enter the school, she would definitely be ridiculed if she wrote with a brush. But using a mop to write, she naturally did not have to worry about things like technique. Please add it to your collection, thank you. Chapter 52. The word misty was written in an ancient style, full of elegance and charm. Zhong Xiaohua wrote it in one go, making the surrounding crowd stunned. Mr. Liu, who was in the hall, heard the clamor outside, and suddenly became abnormally quiet. He also came out of the hall, and when he saw the 2 words on the bluestone board, he didn't say anything. He tasted it carefully and was actually stunned. Speaking of the word misty, it was originally the word on the token. That day, after Zhong Xiaohua asked someone to recognize it, he had simulated, tasted, and practiced how to write it more than once in his heart. Other words like Zhong Xiaohua and Zhong Xiaolong were words that he couldn't write no matter how hard he tried. However, these 2 words had been deeply engraved in his heart, so naturally, he could write it at his fingertips. Of course, based on his standard that hadn't entered the school, writing with a brush would definitely be ridiculed by others. Using a mop to write, he naturally didn't have to care about techniques and such. Suddenly writing it was really shocking. Of course, there were also people who didn't know the value of the word. That butcher Liu was the first to speak. "Why aren't you saying anything? Is it good or bad? Say something." These words immediately woke everyone up. Everyone clapped their hands and praised together. "Good words, good words." The meaning is casual, the ancient charm is long, rare, rare, rare. A few people who had ulterior motives couldn't help but praise. They muttered in their hearts, "This Mr. Liu, the younger brother's standard is already so amazing, not to mention the older brother. He even said that he was from a bumpkin background. Isn't he too low-key? If this standard is considered a bumpkin, then what is our standard?" Mr. Liu's gaze also moved from the bluestone board to Zhong Xiaohua. He naturally knew of Zhong Xiaolong's standard, but this Zhong Xiaohua at such a young age actually had such standard. He really hid it deeply. He had treated him as a child before, but it seemed like he had eyes but didn't recognize Mount Tai. He had to dig more in the future. Actually, Zhong Xiaolong was also very surprised, but now wasn't the time to be surprised. He still had to face the bridesmaid's second question. Sure enough, the second question was still a literary question: compose a poem. Zhong Xiaolong, Zhong Xiaohua, Liu Qian, and Mr. Liu broke out in cold sweat. Who was so shameless? Liu Yeye was also very innocent. She said with her big eyes, "It's all the revenge of those disappointed people. Sister, if you want to blame someone, blame your charm." Zhong Xiaohua wanted to step forward again, but she was stopped by Zhong Xiaolong, who said, "Xiaohua, look at big brother this time." Zhong Xiaolong lowered his head and pondered, pacing back and forth. Not long after, he raised his head and said to the crowd, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just a man who grows crops in the fields, I can't be compared to all of you. However, I've always believed that everyone in this world has their own role to play in survival. Scholars have their own uses, farmers have their own uses, no one can be missing. Today, I'll pretend to be cultured, and reluctantly compose a poem." After saying that, he raised his voice and said, "I was originally a banished immortal in the heavens, wandering in the mortal world for decades. I was just waiting for the opportunity to meet the hidden dragon and soar into the heavens." This time, the crowd was stunned again. Logically speaking, this poem did not rhyme at all, and the word count was also wrong. However, the concept contained within was very distant, and the momentum was boundless. The crowd did not know how to evaluate it. At this time, Mr. Liu interjected and said, "Nephew, this poem's concept is very good. The momentum is overwhelming. I hope nephew will study hard in the future and reach a higher level." When everyone heard this, they could not help but say, "Mr. Liu, you're still calling him nephew. Shouldn't you change your way of addressing him?" The crowd was in an uproar, and everyone said their own words. This second question was passed. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua gave Zhong Xiaolong a thumbs up. Zhong Xiaolong smiled and used his hand to wipe his forehead. It seemed that he was already sweating. When Zhong Xiaolong once again walked to Liu Qian's boudoir, the third question appeared. If the bride was compared to an object, what would you want it to be? This question was very tricky. Everyone's answer would be different, and no matter how they answered, it could be said to be a very good answer. It was also this kind of question that looked easy, but on the contrary, it was not easy to answer. Many people in the crowd were thinking in their hearts. If they were to answer this question themselves, what would they say? However, this question seemed to be too simple for Zhong Xiaolong. He did not even think and immediately answered, "I hope that Qian Qian is a mirror given to me by the heavens. When I make a mistake, she can remind me and correct me. I hope that Qian Qian is a lotus flower given to me by the heavens. We can be harmonious, respect, and love each other forever. I hope that Qian Qian is a crutch given to me by the heavens. When we are both old, we can support each other and grow old together." Zhong Xiaolong's answer was so simple and straight to the heart. Everyone could not help but sigh in their hearts. Liu Qian indeed had a unique insight and found her true love. Originally, there were some people who were dissatisfied, but at this moment, they also felt Zhong Xiaolong's sincerity towards Liu Qian. They could not help but applaud and cheer. Liu Yeye, who was listening in the room, also had stars in her eyes. She smiled and said to Liu Qian, whose face was red and her eyes were sparkling, "Sister, other people are all sour scholars. This future brother-in-law has not studied for a few days. How can he be so sour? Could it be that sister's few days in the Zhong family can make this Zhong Xiaolong so sour? What kind of distance is that?" Liu Qian scolded, "You're thinking too much." Liu Qian scolded with a smile, "You little girl, you're always thinking in the wrong direction. I didn't think that this little dragon would have such literary talent and accomplishment. I didn't teach him these. I only thought that he had the potential in this area. It seems that I didn't misjudge him. Yeye, why aren't you opening the door?" After that, she put the red veil on her head. Liu Yeye said, "Yes, bride." After that, she opened the door wide. The people outside the room saw the door open and knew that the bride's side had passed. Naturally, there was a burst of cheers. Then, Zhong Xiaolong entered the room. Under the accompaniment of the bridesmaid, Liu Yeye, he carefully brought Liu Qian out. They walked into the Liu family's hall together. In the hall, Mr. Liu was already sitting there. Zhong Xiaolong and Liu Qian walked in front of Mr. Liu and knelt down together to kowtow 3 times to the old man. After they finished, Mr. Liu quickly stood up and helped them up. At this time, Liu Qian was already sobbing. She felt the pain of leaving home. It was also because she had gone to other places in the past. In the end, she had to return to her home. No matter where she was, she always had this root in her heart. From today onwards, this was no longer her home. She did not need to think about coming back. She inevitably felt a sense of loss in her heart. Thinking about the place where she grew up and thinking about her mother not being able to see this scene, how could she still control her feelings? Mr. Liu walked in front of Zhong Xiaolong. Zhong Xiaolong quickly called him father-in-law. Mr. Liu looked at Zhong Xiaolong's eyes and put Liu Qian's hand in his hand. He said, "Xiaolong, I'll leave Qian Qian to you. You must remember what you said to me before. Treat her well and don't let her down." Zhong Xiaolong took Liu Qian's hand and said seriously, "Father-in-law, I treat Qian Qian sincerely. In the future, you can look at me. I will definitely not let you down." Then, Mr. Liu walked in front of Liu Qian and took her hand. He said, "Qian Qian, in the future, you are a member of the Zhong family. You must serve your in-laws well and live a good life with Xiaolong. I don't want to say anything else. I just hope that you can grow old together and live a happy life." Liu Qian cried and said, "I know, father. We will do it." Then, Mr. Liu said, "Okay, you should go back quickly. They must still be waiting." After saying this, Zhong Xiaolong took Liu Qian's hand and sent Liu Qian to the bridal sedan that had been waiting for a long time at the door. Then, he got on the horse and let Zhong Xiaohua lead the horse. Liu Yeye accompanied by the bridal sedan. She led the bridal sedan and walked slowly from the Liu family's gate to the village entrance. Mr. Liu watched from afar as the wedding crowd walked further and further away. He couldn't help but cry. The daughter that he had raised for such a long time was going to be married off in the blink of an eye. Even if she would live with him soon, she would not be the same person at that time. At that time, she would first be the daughter-in-law of the Zhong family. Thinking of this, Mr. Liu couldn't help but think of his deceased wife. It was a pity that she passed away early and couldn't see the scene of his daughter getting married. At this time, Liu Kai also came over. He supported his father and comforted him. "Father, Xiaolong is a very good child. The people of the Zhong family are also very reasonable. Sister won't suffer any grievances when she marries over. Moreover, aren't you moving over to live with them soon? If there is anything, you will be the first to know. It's not much different from sister living at home with you now." Mr. Liu sighed and nodded. Then, he shook his head and turned back to the house. Zhong Xiaolong and the others took the bridal sedan out of the village entrance of Balagu. Looking at the sky, it was already late in the morning. He said to Zhong Xiaohua and Liu Yeye, looking at the time, "It's already late. We have to hurry. Xiaohua, you ride with me. Yeye, you also sit in the sedan. It's only right for the bridesmaid to sit in the sedan." The two also followed Zhong Xiaolong's arrangement. One rode a horse and the other sat in the sedan. Only then did the wedding procession speed up and prepare to reach the Guozhuang house before noon. When Zhong Xiaolong and Zhong Xiaohua were dealing with the bride's family, the other people in the wedding procession had already been arranged to eat and drink. Even the horse that Zhong Xiaolong rode had been fed well. After coming out of Balagu, the horse no longer played music. At this time, everyone was full of energy and was ready to hurry. They still walked on the main road back. At this time, there were more people. Everyone was very interested in the wedding procession. Along the way, many people pointed at the wedding procession and commented on Zhong Xiaolong as the groom from time to time. They also guessed the appearance of the bride. It was a pity that the curtains of the bridal sedan were covered. Otherwise, everyone's eyes would look there, hoping to see the beauty of the bride. Chapter 53. The wedding procession hastened their journey and after walking for a while, they arrived at the main road that led to the Guozhuang house. Zhong Xiaolong looked at the sky and said, "It's still early and we're already halfway there. There shouldn't be a problem for us to rush back to the Guozhuang house. Let's rest for a while so that we can rush back in one go." Other than Zhong Xiaolong, Zhong Xiaohua, Liu Qian, and Liu Yeye, the rest of the group were all walking. Putting aside the fact that the sedan bearers were already exhausted from carrying people, the band members were also carrying a few kilograms of heavy instruments. They were also very tired from rushing all the way. When they heard the word rest, they immediately walked to the side of the road and sat down on the grass. They poured out water from their gourds or leather pouches to quench their thirst. The sedan was carefully carried by the sedan bearers to a big tree by the side of the road, and the sedan bearers walked away to rest. Zhong Xiaolong also dismounted and walked to the side of the sedan with Zhong Xiaohua. Zhong Xiaolong took 2 leather pouches from beside the stirrups and handed one to Zhong Xiaohua for him to drink. He held the other pouch in his hand and walked to the side of the sedan. He said to the person in the sedan, "Qian Qian, you must be thirsty. Do you want to drink some water?" Liu Qian did not speak, but it was the bridesmaid Liu Yeye who spoke first. "Elder sister probably isn't thirsty. She's still reminiscing about the twin lotus flowers on one stalk. Why are you thinking about your bride? Isn't I still in this sedan? Why are you asking me if I'm thirsty?" Zhong Xiaolong and Liu Yeye had only met a few times and had heard from Liu Qian that this cousin of his had a straightforward personality. Now that he saw her mocking him, he did not mind and only said, "Isn't she the elder sister? You're the younger sister. Of course I should ask the elder first." Liu Yeye continued, "Oh Tilda, I didn't expect brother-in-law to be so quick-witted. Why didn't I see it before? TSK, elder sister's eyes are really sharp." Then she curled her lips and asked softly, "Elder sister, do you want to drink some water?" Liu Qian's head was still covered with a red veil as she said in a low voice, "I'm not too thirsty, but I still want to drink some to moisten my throat." "If you're thirsty, you can drink first." Liu Yeye said, "All right then, I'll drink it first. I've been busy with your matters since I woke up this morning. I haven't had a single drop of water. Just now, I've talked a lot with them in your room. My mouth is already dry. Wait for me to finish drinking it, then I'll give it to you." After saying that, Liu Yeye lifted the curtain of the bridal sedan chair and walked out. Zhong Xiaolong was standing beside the sedan. When he saw Liu Yeye come out, he quickly handed over the leather bag filled with water. At this time, from the direction of Lu Town, a few people on horses galloped over. The 3 in front were very handsome horses. The 3 people on the horses looked very similar. Their faces were charred black, their eyes were squinted, and they had a lecherous look. They were about 40 years old and wore very bright clothes. The 4 people behind them were ordinary tall horses. The people on the horses were of different height and weight, but they were all dressed in black and had weapons at their waists. Their eyes occasionally wandered around the road, and they seemed to be very careful. These people saw Zhong Xiaolong and his group of people who were listening and resting at the side of the road from afar. They didn't care and hurriedly took a few glances before passing by. Coincidentally, one of the 3 in front was tilting his head and waving his whip when Liu Yeye came out from the bridal sedan chair. She used her hand to take the leather bag handed to her by Zhong Xiaolong and gave Zhong Xiaolong an angry smile. That Liu Yeye was originally round and smooth, and her eyebrows were delicate. Today, she was Liu Qian's bridesmaid, so she dressed up even more beautifully. Zhong Xiaolong didn't think much of this smile, but the person on the horse had a burst of lewd light in his eyes. He couldn't help but let out a yi sound. Immediately, he tightened the reins in his hand and gradually slowed down the horse. The 2 people beside him saw him slow down and immediately turned their heads to ask, "Laro, what's wrong?" That person said, "Big brother, something wonderful has come. What do you think of the woman beside the bridal sedan chair?" The boss looked up and couldn't help but smack his lips and say, TSK, she's really not bad. Although she's not an outstanding beauty, she's still a pretty girl from a humble family." Another person followed up and said, "Big brother, these past few days in Lu Town, you've been having a lot of fun. These words are used very well." That second brother said, "Big brother, last year you found a beautiful woman in that Shin manor. You obtained both wealth and beauty and had a fat new year. I, your brother, have seen you make her the wife of your stronghold. My heart itches. Although this Lu Town girl is interesting, she's still a woman of romance. She won't last long. I think this woman isn't bad. Why don't you get her into the stronghold and let her be my concubine?" The boss said, "The deal before the new year was indeed a good deal. I thought it was his family who dug up the jewels from the mountain and we just took the jewels. Who knew that the woman in his family was so beautiful? How could I let her go? However, second brother, this place is not far from Lu Town and is on the official road. I'm afraid that our actions will attract the attention of the authorities. Another person said, "Big brother, you worry too much. Although it's not far from Lu Town, there are not many people here. Just the few bumpkins who came to escort the bride don't seem to be from this town. If they rob someone, then so be it. It's not the first time we've done this. After we've done it, we don't have to kill anyone. If we leave our names behind, I'm sure they won't dare to report it to the authorities. Let's hurry back to the village. Even if we catch them, the authorities will know." The second brother said, "Laroer's words are very reasonable. Big brother, let's do it." The boss looked around and seemed to be hesitating. Laroer said, "Second brother, the woman in front of the sedan chair is yours. The bride in the sedan chair is mine. Today I'll be the groom." "Ha ha ha." Laroer said, "Hey, the woman in the sedan chair still doesn't know whether she's fat or thin, beautiful or ugly. I'm not interested. This chick has soft skin and tender flesh. I think she suits me." Laroer said, "Second brother, you don't know this. If the bride isn't beautiful, why would she choose such a beautiful girl to be her bridesmaid? I think the bride must be more beautiful than her." Laroer said, "Laroer is clever. However, if I didn't turn around and see it, how can you be the groom today? Tonight before you enter the room, you have to toast me 3 big bowls." Laroer said with a sinister smile, "Same to you. Let's go to the bridal chamber together." The 3 of them talked from afar and looked at the sedan chair from time to time. It seemed that they already had a plan in mind. The 4 people next to them didn't say anything. They surrounded the 3 of them in a circle as if they were used to it. Laroer saw that the boss was still hesitating and said unhappily, "Big brother, what's there to think about? We brothers don't have any fresh girls to serve us this new year. We can't compare to you. You have a beautiful woman in your bed." Laroer saw that Laroer was unhappy and Laroer was eager to try. He laughed and said, "Well said, who have we she 3 wolves been afraid of? Big brother has meat to eat. We can't let the brothers drink only soup. Let's go. Today we'll do a good job and let the brothers eat meat." Finished speaking, the 3 of them turned their horses around and rushed towards Zhong Xiaolong and the others. The other 4 people also came from the side. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua had finished drinking water and handed her leather bag to Laroer. His ears were very sensitive. He heard the sound of horses galloping away and then turning back. He immediately looked up and saw 7 people rushing towards him. He became alert and quickly said to Zhong Xiaolong, "Big brother, be careful. The group of people who just passed by our back. Is there something wrong?" Zhong Xiaolong was just talking to Liu Qian and Liu Yeye. He didn't notice the horses passing by. Now that he heard Zhong Xiaohua's reminder, he immediately looked up and saw the Shi Kui 3 wolves looking at him with lustful eyes. He shouted in his heart, "Not good. Why did I encounter such a thing again?" Just as he was about to have Liu Yeye hide inside the bridal sedan chair, the horses had already arrived in front of him. Zhong Xiaolong frowned and pulled Liu Yeye behind him. He cupped his fists and said, "What orders do you have for me?" The one who rushed at the front was the second brother of the Shi Kui 3 wolves. He saw Zhong Xiaolong salute but didn't answer. He didn't even slow down the horse. Borrowing the horse's momentum, he lifted his leg and kicked towards Zhong Xiaolong's chest. Although Zhong Xiaolong didn't practice martial arts, he was still a young man. He was agile. He quickly moved sideways and got Liu Yeye out of the way. The second brother's leg kicked below his shoulder. Zhong Xiaolong screamed and his body flew out. He fell on the side of the road far away. A mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth and he fainted on his back. The water bag was also thrown far away, allowing the water to gush out. Zhong Xiaohua saw that his big brother was injured. He was shocked and wanted to run over. The third brother of the Shi Kui 3 wolves rode a horse and rushed towards him. He raised his hand and whipped. Zhong Xiaohua saw the whip coming and quickly dodged. He raised his hand and wanted to grab the whip. However, he had exhausted all his strength to pull the bow and shoot arrows this morning. At this moment, his arms were still sore and he couldn't use any strength. He watched the whip hit his face and could only tilt his head as much as possible. The whip fell on his shoulder. Zhong Xiaohua also screamed "Ah" and fell to the ground. The whip on his body was burning hot and he couldn't help but cry. After the second brother and the third brother of the Shi-Kui 3 wolves succeeded, they didn't stop. Instead, they rushed to the rest of the people resting on the side of the road and raised their whips to hit them. The eldest brother ran to the front of the sedan chair. He didn't move forward. Instead, he tightened the reins and stopped. Seeing the second brother and the third brother running to the others, he said to the other 4 people around him, "Go and help them." The other 4 people immediately pulled out their weapons from their waists or horses and outflanked them from different directions. They shouted as they walked, "Shi-Kui Mountain is working here. Those who have nothing to do with it should leave quickly." There were still some people on the road. When they saw these people rushing over and injuring people, they felt strange. There were also some busybodies who stopped to watch the fun. When they heard this, they immediately scattered like birds and animals and fled. The rest of the wedding procession was also very angry when they saw several people on horseback injuring the groom and the best man. They wanted to stand up and pick up the weapons in their hands to win with numbers. However, they didn't expect that the other party had knives and spears. Moreover, they were the bandits of Shi-Kui Mountain. How could they still have the courage? They didn't have time to care about the others. They were all shouting mother and father. They didn't even want to eat anymore. They threw away everything in their hands and fled in all directions. In the blink of an eye, there were no extra people on the busy road just now. There were only Zhong Xiaolong lying on the ground, Zhong Xiaohua struggling to get up, Liu Yeye who was panicking and didn't know what to do, and the people of Shi-Kui Mountain who succeeded in their plot and were complacent. Chapter 54. When the people of Shitsue Mountain saw the wedding procession running away, they didn't chase after them. They knew that these villagers were timid and wouldn't come back for a while. If they didn't kill them, they wouldn't resist. When they had the courage to come back, they would have returned to Shitsue Mountain. Liu Qian, who was in the bridal sedan, didn't know what had happened. She heard Zhong Xiaolong's words after Liu Yeye went out, so she knew that someone was coming. Then she heard Zhong Xiaolong scream. She felt pain in her heart and wanted to get out of the bridal sedan. However, the custom in the countryside was that the bride couldn't take off the red veil before entering the bridal chamber, so she hesitated. Then she heard Zhong Xiaohua's scream and the shouts of the people of Shitsue Mountain. She immediately knew that something was wrong. She made up her mind, tore off the red veil, opened the curtain and walked out. What she saw was Liu Yeye's trembling shoulders and the head of Shitsue Mountain's lecherous and regretful eyes. At this time, Liu Qian, who had been nourished by the well water of the Zhong family, was not at the same level as Liu Yeye. Her skin was as smooth as jade, her eyebrows were beautiful, and her almond-shaped eyes were charming. If she was not very beautiful in the eyes of young ruffian Lu Zhen a few months ago, now she was a beauty. In particular, her temperament, which was changing, was even more fascinating, like a fairy in the human world. The head of Shitsue Mountain couldn't help but feel regretful. This flower was picked by his third brother, who probably wouldn't let go. It was rare for him to take advantage of her. What a pity. Liu Qian didn't pay attention to the head of Shitsue Mountain, nor did she comfort Liu Yeye. Instead, she ran to see Zhong Xiaolong, who had fainted. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua also stood up. She endured the burning pain in her body, clenched her teeth, and didn't let her tears fall. She walked step by step towards her eldest brother. At this time, Zhong Xiaohua had no other thoughts. The seed that had been brewing in her heart for a long time had bloomed. She had made up her mind that she would no longer live a life of being at the mercy of others. If she survived today, she would only choose one path in the future, which was to practice martial arts. She would use absolute force to protect herself, her family, and the people in the world who needed to be protected. She would no longer allow others to trample on her dignity and the happiness of her family. At this moment, our Xiaohua had transformed, matured, and found a goal in life. However, the crisis was not over yet, but Zhong Xiaohua no longer cared about this. He knew that no matter how tragic the ending was, time would always pass and the end would come. He would face it bravely even if he lost his life. The people of Shitsue Mountain naturally didn't know that they had added fuel to the fire to promote the development of the martial arts world. At this time, they were arrogantly riding back, ready to snatch the fat meat in their mouths. Liu Qian ran in front of Zhong Xiaolong and knelt down. She looked at his blood-stained chest with heartache. She carefully picked up his head and placed it on her chest. She used her nails to pinch Zhong Xiaolong's philtrum. Liu Qian did not cry. She knew her situation. Any helpless action would only make the villain more arrogant. Perhaps her fate had been determined. She also had to say goodbye to her lover. When Zhong Xiaohua staggered to Zhong Xiaolong had slightly opened his eyes. He looked at his bride helplessly and was extremely indignant in his heart. Although the other party hurt him without talking, he, who had woken up, naturally knew the other party's intention. However, how could he resist? He looked around with difficulty. By the side of the road, there were only things left on the ground. There was not a single person. He sighed inwardly. The shoulder of the hand that had just recovered was dislocated by a kick. He could not move it. He used his other hand to hold the hand that was pinching his philtrum. He did not say anything. The two of them looked at each other. There was only deep love and endless resentment. Zhong Xiaohua looked at his beloved elder brother and his favorite sister-in-law. Such a scene made his heart ache. Liu Yeye, who was beside the sedan chair, saw Zhong Xiaolong wake up and quickly ran over. It seemed that it was safer here. The boss of Shitsue Mountain did not stop them and slowly rode his horse over. The other people also drove their horses and slowly surrounded them. The third brother of Shitsue Mountain waved the horsewhip in his hand and stared at Liu Qian, who was wearing a wedding dress. He felt extremely refreshed. This trip was really worth it. He got such a beautiful woman without any effort. In the future, he would have unlimited happiness. The second brother of Shitsue Mountain stared at Liu Qian. His heart was full of jealousy. He secretly regretted letting the third brother get the upper hand. However, when he looked at Liu Yeye's pale face, he felt a little comforted. He stole a glance at the greedy look of the eldest brother and could not help but feel lucky. The bride was so beautiful. After returning to the mountain, he did not know who she would belong to. It was better for him not to get involved. When Liu Yeye saw that everyone was surrounding them, she could not help but hug her shoulders and asked with a trembling voice, what do you want to do?" The second brother of Shitsue Mountain said with a lewd smile, "We don't want to do anything. It's just that when we see this little brother being the groom today, our hearts are also itching. We want to be the groom and have a taste. How about it? Seeing your sister as the bride, do you also want to have a taste? Let's enter the bridal chamber together tonight." In fact, she already knew what the ending would be. At this time, when she heard the other party's affirmative answer, Liu Yeye was speechless. She just said in fear, you. Liu Qian's face was also as white as paper. She was very scared. But she held her lover's hand in her hand, so she did not tremble. Zhong Xiaolong said weakly, "Heroes, there are countless beauties in Lu Town. How can my wife enter the eyes of heroes? If you can let us husband and wife go today, we will definitely go bankrupt and send all our property to Shitsue Mountain in the future." The third brother of Shitsue Mountain laughed and said, "Your wife's beauty is very good in our eyes. It's your blessing to take a fancy to her. If you know what's good for you and let her go with us, we can still spare your lives. Otherwise, all of your heads will be chopped off. You won't be able to marry a wife even if you want to." The second brother of Shitsue Mountain also laughed and said, "You don't look like a son of a rich family. What gold and silver jewelry can tempt us? It's better to obediently give them away." At this time, from the distance of the main road, another person riding a horse rushed over. The people of Shitsue Mountain heard the sound of horse hooves from afar. They all looked up and saw that it was a person, so they did not care. Only the eldest brother frowned and said, "Why are you being so long-winded with them? Take them and leave. From time to time, there will be people passing by on the main road. Don't run into a large group of people. If they don't let go, chop off their heads." The second brother and the third brother heard this and their expressions turned cold. They immediately agreed and jumped off the horse. They each rushed to Liu Yeye and Liu Qian. Seeing the bad guy rushing to the eldest sister-in-law, Zhong Xiaohua immediately blocked in front. The third brother of Shitsue Mountain reached out and grabbed Zhong Xiaohua's neck like lightning. He shook his hand and threw her to the side of the road. Then he reached out and grabbed Liu Qian's hand and pulled her onto the horse. Zhong Xiaolong pulled Liu Qian's hand hard, but he couldn't pull away the third brother of Shitsue Mountain. He watched Liu Qian's hand fall away from his own hand. His hand fell weakly on his chest and touched something hard on his chest. Suddenly, Zhong Xiaolong's eyes lit up. He seemed to think of something. He shouted, "Heroes, my family has relatives from Misty School. I have a token here as proof. We are all Jianghu people. Can you give me some face?" Misty School? The people of Shitsue Mountain were stunned. The second brother and the third brother let go of their hands. Liu Qian and Liu Yeye quickly returned to Zhong Xiaolong's side. The man riding a horse on the main road just passed by them at this time. He was concentrating on the road and didn't pay attention to the movement on the side of the road. When he heard Misty School, his ears couldn't help but twitch, and then he slowed down the horse. However, the people of Shitsue Mountain were focused on Zhong Xiaolong and didn't notice. The eldest brother of Shitsue Mountain jumped down from the horse and walked to Zhong Xiaolong and said, "Where is the token? Let me see." Zhong Xiaolong hurriedly used his good hand to take out the token that he accidentally put in his arms with difficulty and handed it over. The eldest brother of Shitsue Mountain carefully took it and looked at both sides carefully. His face was a little gloomy. He then handed it to the second brother and the third brother. The two of them also looked at it very seriously. Then they also handed the token to the eldest brother with a gloomy face. The three of them looked at each other. Their eyes were fierce and they didn't speak anymore. Then, the eldest brother put the token into his arms and said with a sinister smile, "What kind of bullshit token is this? The firewood picked up from the pile of firewood dares to be called a token? Do you know what Misty School is? You still dare to say that you have relatives? Forget it, I originally wanted to spare your lives. Now, I'll do you a favor and save some food for your family. I'll send you to the underworld to rest." At this time, Zhong Xiaohua had stood up from the ground and walked to the eldest brother. She gritted her teeth and said, You want to kill us to silence us?" The third brother of Shitsue Mountain said with a grim smile, "Misty School is far away. If we kill you, who will know that it's us? You'd better tell them in their dreams." After that, he waved his hand and dragged Liu Qian and Liu Yeye over with the second brother of Shitsue Mountain. The other four people held weapons and were about to kill. At this critical moment, a voice came from behind, who said that Misty School is far away. There is an ancient poem that says it well. Far away is close at hand. The people of Shitsue Mountain looked back. It was the person who came from afar. They thought that he had gone far, but unexpectedly, he still stayed on the roadside. They saw that the man was tall and handsome. He was wearing grey clothes and there was a sword hanging on his waist. When the eldest brother of Shitsue Mountain saw the man coming over, he hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. He said, "I'm Shitsue Mountain's third wolf. I'm here to do something. May I know your name?" The man smiled back and said, "I'm Misty School's Lu Yuming. Nice to meet you. I heard that I sent relatives here, so I came to see. Where is the token? Please let me take a look." The eldest brother of Shitsue Mountain said, "Xiaoxia Lu is mistaken. How can this person be a relative of your sect? Just now, he took a fake token and wanted to impersonate it, but I put it away. Xiaoxia Lu doesn't need to see it." Lu Yuming still smiled and said, "Whether it's real or fake, my Misty School has the final say. Please let me take a look. I promise that as long as it's not an ethereal token, I'll leave immediately." You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.